Stop me if you've heard this before this year, last year, and in any year in the past. Most junglers are freaking out about the jungle changes and how they can actually use the role to climb. 99% you've also freaked out at one point or another. Except of course the great challenger junglers who are not really complaining and just getting down to business. That's because they know they need to use more of one fundamental and less of another. And when you know all of them, then you don't really care about meta shifts and you simply adapt accordingly. Let's get to work. Do you know the difference between a challenger jungler and you? It is simply your roam dominance score, otherwise known as your ganking success rate in the early game. And it's the same whether you're iron or diamond. For every single champion in the game that plays in the jungle, while their farming goes up the higher rank they are, so does the ganking. So how are they doing it? It's not necessarily that you are not trying to gank as much, it's simply that your ganking sucks and you're unable to get the success from the attempts, and thus you are unable to get kill leads, gold leads, and win games. Right, first and foremost, we need to talk about the most important thing, and that's whether the gank you want to commit is warded or unwarded, and do you know or do you not know? We will look at all these eventualities, but please consider the summoner spells and dash ability of the champion you are ganking, as well as your champions, as well as your laner's champions. This is something so fundamental, I'm not going to basically deal with it in each and every example. Use your F keys, click around the map, make sure you are keeping track of summoner spells as much as possible, but in the event you don't know what's going on, I will also address this in those ganks. Now let's look at this side lane gank. You can see here that we want to approach the lane in a very classical sense. You can directly go straight at your laners, run at them, but then you need to consider where are they located in the lane and what summoner spells do they have that might allow them to create space for my laners as well as me. That is the first on the ganking checklist, and it's something that has to go through your mind as you are approaching. Now for a pushed lane, this is pretty damn simple. I don't really care where exactly you are arriving from, but as soon as you see that lane super pushed up, we don't really care if it is warded or not. So if it is, doesn't matter. If it isn't, doesn't matter. Just press the go button, continue your approach, and then go all in. Make sure you get the kills, and obviously use all your spells appropriately. That's an easy one. However, what you do need to pay attention to is the minion wave, theirs versus yours. If your team has none and they're basically backing up on tower with no HP, you can't expect any sort of help from your team, and thus you don't want to gank the enemy within that lane and then tank all of the minions damage plus the laner's damage. So therein is the calculations you need to conduct in your head very, very simply, very, very quickly. Can I do this 2v1 with the minions being tanked? Or do I have to wait for the minions to crash, in which case a little bit of patience is important, and obviously pressing that scanner or using your control ward to see if you are seen is kind of useful, but you don't really want to wait to clear those wards, because if the enemy lane starts to detach, you spend time clearing a ward, you might not have that great angle by the time you start approaching. Now if the lane is in a more neutral position in the middle, then the fact that it's warded versus not warded becomes a little bit more important. Basically in this situation, if you use your approach to kind of cut around the corner, like, you know, if they were pushed up, it allows the enemy to pull away from you, and the only way that's okay is if it is 1, warded in the bush you walk through and so you just press the go button, and 2, your team actually has CC or some sort of ability to chase the enemy down. Think at least Cocoon, think Kindred ranged advantage, think Graves E smokescreen with a W. You have to understand your champion. If you simply cannot have that chase ability for whatever reasons, depending on your laners and you, then it's better to go for a longer, more wide approach, and you want to be scanning for the duration. You want to make sure you avoid any side vision from the laner and of course their minions. This allows you to now have a better angle of approach as you're going into the lane to ensure that you can maximize your CC and damage before they maybe dash or flash or simply die, which is what we want. If you are coming straight from the river, then that's less of an issue. You can just stick to the wall. The most important thing here is to use your scanner, pay attention to when laners leave lane to place those wards, and then obviously if the lane is pushed up, then you're basically going for a dive. And yes, in that case, if you are seen, you want to know it, because your jungle tracking will tell you where the enemy jungler is, but if you have a small window whereby you can just go for this dive before enemies show up, then you don't want to waste too much time clearing the vision, waiting around, or simply sitting in a bush and going, he doesn't see me, but he does. And that therein is absolute pro tip. Don't go for a gank when the lane is kind of in a weird position such that you have to wait for it to push a little bit and you don't scan and you don't use a control ward. Never sit in the bush if you are not 100% certain that it isn't warded. You are wasting time, you are seen, you are giving them free counter jungling, free heralds, free opposite side plays, free counter ganks. It is absolutely tragic. But when you break it down like this, it doesn't seem so difficult. Push lane, just cut it, doesn't matter if it's warded or not. Middle lane, check if it's warded, check if it isn't, but based upon your champion, you can do either of those approaches. And then obviously the dives, that's a case of juggling aggro, using CCs and dodging spells, and that comes with practice. Please go commit those dives. I want you to die a few times. You're not going to get better at it until you do it. And as far as the ranged advantage goes, make sure you keep yourself in a position whereby as the enemy is running towards you, if you have a good angle of approach, and then walking away from you, that whole arc, you are attacking them. So don't stand still, keep moving to maximize the amount of attacks you can get for the duration that they're trying to leave you. And this can be if you're Kindred, Graves, any sort of ranged auto attacker, because your spells are interwoven with that. And essentially it just boils down to just keep auto attacking. Please use your range advantage. You don't need to go up into melee range or only hit your spells. It's really amazing what one auto attack can do on a gank, as you would have seen just there. And you also would have noticed that there was a nice tight approach. Even though the lane was kind of in a D-neutral position, by that I mean more towards the enemy's tower than ours, you can still get a really nice angle of approach if you stick tight to the wall. And if you're basically talking about all of these approaches into the mid lane, all of the same concepts apply. Do I need to go for a dive? Is it better to wrap around the back? Of course. Can I just run straight from the river? Yes, but only if you know it's not warded, or if you know that they're low and you can chase them down. You have to do these calculations using your F keys. I'm not here to tell you exactly when to use what, because that will change every single game with a million different factors, and only you can recognize and process that. And obviously for the pathing tricks to circumvent and get around vision when you know it's warded, that I've already made a video about, and I will leave it linked in the description below. We talk about every single sort of gap in vision you can use as a ganker to approach, and make sure you get that best angle of approach such that your attacks and everything can land perfectly. Well, provided you can hit skill shots, yeah? Now that's the approach of the gank, and is usually quite simple. Your Rek'Sais and Kayns can obviously extend that approach, and so can Kha'Zix. Some champions don't have to apply the rules to themselves because of their unique kits, but the rest of us, hey, if we scan and it's warded and the lane's in a bad situation and they decompress, such is the life of the jungler, you know? You can't go for that gank, you just clear the vision, do something else, and then you can always come back again. But when we are actually going for the gank, you need to know when to fully commit or approach. As such, you might need a little bit of that patience as well. Hey, we scanned, there's no vision, lane's in a terrible state, but looks to be pushing back towards my side. I can wait a little bit, I wasn't seen, there's no other play that can be made. Is the enemy jungler coming down and I tracked it? I can just sit in this bush and counter gank him without him even getting to the gank in the first place. These are the sorts of things that jungle tracking, again, full guide, linked below, everything you need to know about tracking to make you a savant in that video. And you know, we're not really using the pings as they're intended on EUS, as I'm sure most of you know, but ideally in sort of neutral lanes that are not a free gank. By that I mean, you know, when they're not just juicy pushed and you can just run in and do whatever monkeys do and fling some shit at them and get the kill. It's way better if the laners can kind of bait in those spells by forcing an engage, positioning in a very suggestive way, and then you can show up once their spells have been used, and usually that's when you get the free kills. And that's when you know it's not warded, because you've scanned, because you've been paying attention, such that you can afford to use that patience. If it is warded and you know you can make this play, or simply if your laners are absolutely terrible at the game and don't do the bait, then we just have to pull the trigger ourselves. And that's a critical thing about ganking. Don't wait too long when the lane is good. Just go, just walk, just engage, hit your spells, and that's all you need to do. People are way too hung up on enemies missing their spells, on your team missing their spells. Just focus on yours. If your laners have CC and they actually go for it, use yours afterwards. Don't use it at the same time. You want to stack that CC as much as possible. If you have a CC spell and no one else has CC, and the enemy laner is, say, someone very mobile, then you want to hold your spell until they've used a dash, until they've used a flash. Don't waste your CC spell with flash when you know they're just going to flash and dash afterwards. Only do that if it's really early and you know you're going to repeat that lane in a very short while. But ideally, you're not doing that anyway. We're walking at them, we're using the good angle of approach, we're using our other spells, our auto attacks. We want to bait them into using their mobility, then we use our CC, we've already preloaded them with damage, now we can pile on with our laners, and most likely they'll die. If they don't die, then they will use their dash afterwards, and of course that's where your auto-attacking relentlessness comes in. But that is the absolute key to all ganking, stacking CC and being patient with CC, and also basically paying attention to when the lane is in the best spot for you to pull the trigger. And this is a very potent question people always ask, how long should I wait in the bush for the gank? Well, if you learn about lane states, you can kind of tell pretty quickly, and if your team aren't looking to bait and no one's going in, then you can simply use your approach to get whatever spells off you can, and then leave the gank alone. If the enemy is playing super safe for about 5 to 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and it looks like, hey, they're not really going for this, then just leave and carry on about your business. The only time you want to really chill in a bush is if you're setting up something huge ultimate spike, a herald push, you know the enemy jungler's arriving, and you are doing one of these beautifully patented lane ganks. A lane gank simply moving through the middle of the lane in any of the lanes or using the side bushes in top and bot to basically surprise the enemy laner despite what their positioning might be. If they're pushed further up or pushed further back, sometimes it doesn't really matter. Very often you can counter gank mid lane through the lane gank as you're cutting by farming. Something happens, you're like, ooh, I better turn on that, and you just cut down and make a play. You save a laner or, you get a cleanup kill. It doesn't really matter. The key is you have to pay very careful attention to the mini waves in every sort of gank, but definitely the lane ganks, to ensure that the surprise is best met with surprise. Effectively, this sort of champion pool allows you to approach in an unexpected way, especially when you are in a negative game state, such as you're being invaded, enemy jungle has prior over your jungle, and you're just looking to snowball one of the lanes to try and win the game. Obviously, those are but some of the junglers you can use to lane gank. Almost anyone can actually do it, especially when they bring dove. But these are especially good when you know the rivers or other bushes are warded, and you can't really get a great angle of approach, unless you're scanning and clearing the vision, which of course gives away your position, and now you're seen and there's nothing else to do on the side of the map, so you have to swap and go to the other side. The enemy jungle is going to show up. Now what? It's better then, after you're doing a quadrant, for example, slide into those side bushes, make sure you know the jungler's coming or not coming, and then obviously scan and use control wards. You don't sit in a bush knowing that you're seen. We've talked about this. Please don't do that. It's embarrassing. This is great when that lane is kind of pushed up a little bit and you know the enemy's going to try and use their lead or their aggression to try and force some sort of fight. Honestly, there's not a lot of big brain weird tactics that no one's ever heard of in terms of ganking where I say, listen, this is the best place to do a lane gank. No one's ever done this trick ever. It makes junglers OP. No, it's just clickbait. It's not real. You just have to go into a game thinking, right, this is the lane I want to gank. Pay attention to the lane state. Is it warded? Is it not warded? Which is the best angle of approach here based upon their CC, my laner's CC, and what dash ability and flashes we have. If it's sort of, loaded up, the best thing for you to do when you want to repeat lanes or repeat lane ganks as it were, is to use different varied approaches. Now, if you happen to be a good counter jungler or, enemy jungler shows bot lane, you sacrifice them because that's what you do with bot lane. You take their camps. This gives you a much better angle of approach for top and of course mid lane. Use those to get great angles of approach in every single opportunity. As soon as you counter jungling, the first thing you look for afterwards isn't falling back to base, isn't falling back to your jungle. Look at the lanes. Can I dive? Can I flank from behind? Because when I flank from behind, that's the best angle of approach to hit CC and all my damage spells. So say you go through this video and you're like, well, that doesn't really help me. I knew all of this. Trust me, go watch one of your games. Yourself or go watch one of your games. I guarantee you, one, sat in a bush that wasn't warded, two, walked through a bush that was warded, didn't think about it, and had a terrible angle of approach such that the laner saw you and just ran away. Another one is that most likely the lane was in a push state and you thought that's ungankable. Well, why didn't you just walk tight to the wall like I showed in the Zyra Cassandra example? Why didn't you wait for the lane to push and go for a dive? Just because a lane is in what you perceive as an ungankable state doesn't mean it's actually ungankable. As long as you understand tower hugging, patience versus no hesitation based upon whether they're fighting or not. If they're fighting and you're walking up, I don't care if it's warded, that's great, they're focused on each other. That's when you show up to get those kills. It's also based on your ability to actually hit your spells and chain CC together, and obviously track spells. Most people just front load all their CC, the enemy just flashes out and runs away. Then they do it again, then they do it again. Why don't you try be a little bit patient if the lane is in a very gankable position? You have time as they try and leave the lane for you to actually hit your spells. And if they do flash and you don't, well guess what? The next time you arrive, that's a dead laner. Watch this video, watch your replays where you think, oh, there's no ganks available. Look at the lanes very carefully, look where you're located on the map. Could I have just pathed in a different way? There are a multitude of ways to path into every single lane. I showed that with arrows in this video. Check listed, check mark it, and check it twice. Santa will not be coming if you do not gank your laners thrice. I'm going to give you 4 ways to reveal the truth about proactive versus reactive jungling. We've seen the Dantes vs. Gurren videos talking about these two concepts. People are saying it's easier to be reactive than proactive, but I want to show you how these two terms actually mean very little when you talk about the concept of jungle flow, which is just making good decision after good decision. You also can't confuse these terms with aggressive versus passive because that isn't the same thing at all. You have to remember that proactive actually means to be in control of something, to be in control of a situation. Doesn't necessarily mean just doing something blindly. That's high risk. That will be aggressive. You finish off a dragon, now you've got 3 possible plays. You can go and invade the blue buff, you can gank bot lane or mid lane, or you can fall back to your camps. Each one is a different level of risk. If you choose the one with higher risk based upon, say, the backtimers of the bottom lane and the enemy jungler respawning, that would be an aggressive play. If you decide to go back to your camps and kind of see what happens, then that would be more of a passive play. This is famously what Scenario said to me last year when he got to top 10 with Master Yi and obviously got to rank 1 with Master Yi this season. He likes to only go for those plays that have 80% chance of success because he's the best champion that scares with gold, and delaying that gold delays his ability to 1v9 games with his champion. This can be applied to any jungler. So just being aggressive or passive in a game like League means going for that guaranteed golden experience, say 300-400, over the potential of getting maybe 700-800, but you could also just as easily get 0, so coin flipping. And for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Virkayu, founder of Virkayu.gg. I've helped tens of thousands of junglers reach their ranked goals from gold all the way up to challenger, and I make this content to help you climb with jungle 10 times faster. If you want help implementing this information into your own game, I have a free jungle improvement resource and a dedicated program, including jungle courses, weekly classes, private videos seen nowhere else, a full backlog of coaching VODs, and more, and that is linked directly below. So let's start off with a Dante's example here just to showcase what we're talking about with passive-aggressive, proactive, and reactive, and why those last two terms don't really mean much. As I said, proactive is control. Reacting to behaviors on the map is a direct correlation to your tracking ability and then gaining visual confirmation of that prediction. And when you have a vision score lower than the combined IQ of 3 sticks of wood, you're probably not making the best decisions on the best information you have. If we remove the terms proactive and reactive but kind of assign them to this Dante's example, you'll see he finishes off his full clear and he goes through the tri-bush. Pause. This is where a lot of people would say, hey, this is a proactive move to go for the scuttle crap. No, it's aggressive, it's high risk. Why? Because you should be paying attention to the fact that the enemy bot lane shoved up, moved up, and most likely warded that tri-bush while you were full clearing. That was within vision, we should have known this. So it's very important that you track those things all the time. You should also notice that the Maokai, when he ganked mid lane, you press tab, you see 12 CS plus a red buff when you actually click on to watch the action. Oh, he did his red plus frogs and raptors. Afterwards, you watch where they're moving and oh, he's going to his blue side. So this is why you can see these terms actually mean very, very little. Yes, the Maokai and the Talon are going to react to the fact that you've made this play, but that's just because it's an overly aggressive play with high risk. And I'm going to show you what a Gurren would do in the exact same situation that people would call reactive or passive jungling, when that just isn't really the case. We're only talking about good decision making. That's all that really exists within the jungle. But first we have to get through this. So nothing happens here, he doesn't die and he's able to escape. That's wonderful actually, and he goes to double scuttle. After this he decides, hey, I'm gonna go and counter jungle the second spawn of the raptors from the Maokai. Now some people in this case would say, hey, this is proactive jungling, stealing his raptors because we know he started them, so plus 2 minutes 15 for the respawn timer. Hey, that now equals, 355 for the respawn. Yeah, but the only reason you're going for this and you know the respawn is because you had a ward on his red buff that showcased that he did raptors first. If he did red first into Krugs into Raptors, those Raptors would only respawn at 4 minutes 35 to 4 minutes 40. That means blindly going for this Raptor counter jungling would be a stupid move, a bad decision based upon no information or bad information. Now you have to remember there's multiple ways this can play out. The Maokai hadn't even done his blue side, so he could finish that and you could argue probably should. However, he decides to rotate and try and cut off for the 2v2 fight. That's because he knows exactly what you're doing. And I'm going to give you the alternative play here that will actually make you understand what I'm talking about. If we know that it's warded in tri-bush and we want to remain anonymous to the enemy jungler, and we're farming jungler who sequences and focus on 6, much like a Hecarim, just go back to base. Talon has Prior in the mid lane, bottom lane has Prior in the bottom lane, Maokai is on his blue side quadrant, you cannot go and fight over that, you will simply lose out. So go back to base immediately upon finishing Krugs if bot lane isn't gankable. Now you can go straight to the top side scuttle, and because you have those timers on the Raptors and the Krugs, if you can fill your time doing, say, a top lane gank, a mid lane gank, you will be able to get those Raptors and his Krugs for free because a Maokai won't be forced to move over, he won't expect you to be there. Most likely he's spending his time looking to gank on the bottom side of the map. This would give you that control you so desire. And that's when I use these terms, and you've seen them in these videos, proactive versus reactive. I'm talking about the one who sets the tempo, the one who understands the map. And that doesn't mean going for aggressive plays, that sometimes means knowing when to give shit up so that you can get better shit somewhere else. Now we can call this aggressive and proactive and cool and difficult, but all it is bad decision making because now you've compromised your overall level 6 spike timer, you get to the bottom lane, you go for a highly risky gank knowing Maokai's on the top side, your ADC has no HP, you have literally nothing else to do, so you're almost forced into a suboptimal decision. And because the Maokai had a delayed taking of his blue side quadrant because of your aggression early, those camps have not yet respawned. Whereas if you'd done what I said you should do, you would actually be able to full sequence down here. You might be able to get the kills here on the bottom lane with level 6, And if you cannot, you will have the respawns of his wolves and Gromp through a classical clear available to you at this time. In lower elo games, maybe you get the Raptors, maybe you get the Krugs, maybe you get everything you want here and a bottom lane triple kill. That doesn't mean they were necessarily good decisions. Now Agurin, as we shift over to this Jarvan example, is the absolute master of making the right play through an awareness that 99.9% of junglers just don't have. Dante seems to want to force issues when he doesn't have to, and when he doesn't exactly have the advantages he thinks he has. So as our Jarvan does a full clear here, what I mean is both junglers get $100 in revenue, but Agurin has way more profit than Dante's does because his risk assessment and his decision making are absolutely top tier godlike. He wastes no expenses and he focuses only on making the right plays. For example, we're in the same situation here. Bottom lane, mid lane, precarious, Karthus full clearing down. We finish off our Gromp, we go straight back to base. I covered a video of him doing this last year already on Jarvan to counter jungler Sejuani on the top side when he had all losing lanes. In this particular case, you know that Karthus is now on the bottom side thanks to Vision. We know Karthus is full clearing down and he's going to be doing that. So what we can do here is actually set up deep vision into his jungle by not getting a scanner. We can also track and maybe sneak away that second spawn Gromp if the Karthus invests a lot of time into other ganks. But if top lane is gankable and diveable, we can do that as well. So what we go ahead and do is dive the top laner and kill the GP. The enemy Pyke makes a huge TP to actually kill Agurin, but there's nothing reactive about this play. This is a proactive play. Remember, when I say these terms and when we all use these terms, we mean to be in control. When we say reactive pathing, we mean, oh look, there's something on the map. I do my risk assessment. Hey, can I rotate and make an impact here, or should I just stay on the guaranteed golden experience? But if that's the case and we are continuously shifting these terminologies around, then all we can say is, hey, just make the right jungle decision in the moment that gives me the most golden experience. Because remember, golden experience are what you need to win games, because you need more of that, and the team with the more of those things wins the game typically. Another way to think about it is I'd rather have 5 out of 5 perfectly executed, well-assessed ganks versus 5 out of 10 just spamming randomly or saying, well, I got nothing else to do, I might as well gank bot lane. Oh no, the Jinx got a triple. Remember that from earlier? Now let's continue this game on a little bit because something interesting happens, and then we'll talk about how Agurin does this against, say, a hyper-ganking jungler who ends up 4-0-0, because it's also important to understand what you do when your laners are losing in this situation. He's finished his respawn now and says, hey look, I got bottom lane prio, I got mid lane prio, I know the Karthus, because of my deep vision, is going to be sequencing down, and he will probably go to his Krugs. So what I can do is just do this dragon. The enemy team decide, hey look, let's actually make the aggressive play here and go for a little bit of a fist. Now the Sylas loses his primate, goes a long way around the wall, which compromises the numbers advantage, and Agurin dies. They lose the dragon. A long fight draws out, and Agurin respawns and, kills the Blitzcrank on the bottom side of the map. But what the Karthus didn't do, and I want you to pay careful attention to this, is track the CS and understand what the enemy jungler was doing prior to that dragon fight and what it means for right now. The Karthus likewise died, respawns, goes for his blue and Gromp, obviously. He's, hey look, top lane's pushed in, I can go ahead and gank that, and decides to go for it. Vladimir burns his ult, and then he can go for what people were calling the proactive aggressive red buff invade, and then they can say, well look, the Jarvan reacted. No, think about it. The Jarvan had sequenced top to bottom 2 times in a row, and the second time he had 44 CS at that dragon fight. 44 CS is your first full clear plus buffs plus a crab, which equals 28, and then you do your Krugs again, Raptors again, Wolves again, Gromp again. Hey look, 44 CS. That means if you extrapolate that clear speed after his initial respawn death that Agurin had on the top side when Pyke killed him, you would know that the guy has no bottom side camps available. And no, this isn't reactive playing, this is you as the Karthus making a bad decision that's getting punished. And obviously here you can do your Krugs, you do your Raptors, and most of you are thinking, oh, free Herald, right? Yeah, but it's kind of difficult to do that when the Pyke is shown the propensity to roam first, and also it's a Pyke, so he can rotate a lot easier than most champions, he has a camouflage, and then Karthus could come from base, you've got the GP ultimate. Karthus would have spent all of his cash money gold, you wouldn't have spent anything from that kill. So we take the low risk play of saying, listen, let me full sequence down. I'll give you the Herald because I pretty much think you're gonna go for that, thinking I'm gonna go for it. And because of that, and I know you were sequencing top to bottom, your bottom side quadrant will be up. So I'm gonna take your Raptors and your red, shadow for the dive and the gank on the bottom lane. When Ezreal gets suspicious, I'll just wait and go back to base. If he shows up, I'll cancel, kill him, then take the Krugs, and now I can go back to base. All of a sudden, a Karthus farming jungler just got 3 quadranted. That means I have 3 of the 4 quadrants of the map under my control and I've taken them in order. And then now Agurin can get a bit more aggressive. He can use this reset from that bottom side kill into a top lane push, get a dive going, steal the guy's top side quadrant Gromp. Again, we already took 3 quadrants, now we're taking the 4th. Use the river control to take a dragon, and now you have two ways you can play this. You can do this in the more passive approach of saying, hey look, I can do all my camp sequencing to the top side, or I can continue to leverage my proactive / control into a gank on the bottom side, more counter jungling on the bottom side. I can rotate to mid lane, shiver in the turret, get some plate gold, and then I can fall back to my camps. And of course, I call this the outside in rule, and you see the definition on your screen, just simply where you take the stuff furthest away from your jungle and then fall back to your jungle as a reward because, hey, they can't trail you forever and you've taken all their stuff. But within the context of these small examples, do you see what I mean by just taking good decision after good decision? And we can label some as aggressive, some as passive, some as high risk, some as low risk. But ultimately being proactive just means to be the jungler that's setting a tempo, and the one who's being reactive is the one who's trailing you, trying to make up for your plays. And that's difficulty. And look at this game here now. We full clear as Jarvan. Now someone's going to say, oh, you saw Gragas top lane with 20 CS. The only reason you went for his Krog counter jungling is because you saw him with 20 CS. Well, yeah, you don't know what they've done until they eventually show if you have no early vision, and you can actually count and track the CS and make that assessment. Thing is, always look for that gank if it's possible from a good angle. If it isn't, just go back to base. You can defend your Krogs from the Gragas who gank top lane from potential of being stolen. Obviously, at this point, he will reset. And the reason why we keep that warding totem, and I've been telling people for years, keep that warding totem because you can put it deep in the enemy jungle and track their randomness. If you expect them to go to Krogs and they show Krogs, cool. Now I know what I expected is going to happen and I can make the plays that I wanted to make in the first place. If he doesn't show up there or he shows up later, then I know he did something else. For example, he probably did his Raptors into Krogs versus doing the Krogs first. What this allows me to do is then move on down to his gank, get the kills, and shift on over to a dragon. This isn't reactive jungling. He proactively placed the ward because he has control, because he tracked his first clear, because he knew what he was going to do next. So he made the good decision, the high probability decision of moving to the bottom lane. If his bottom lane were completely wiped by the time he got to Wolves, he's not going to go there. He's just going to finish off his Gromp, go back to base, and look to do something else, probably on the Herald side. Now, what's funny about this career VOD scouting that I've been doing during these trips is that they do kind of like to go for these 50-50 fights over these dragons. We're able to get it in this case and die to the Kai'Sa. We respawn, we go to our top side again, Krogs, Red, Raptors. And as soon as you see, oh look, the Gragas is bot lane again, now we just use something I call equal and opposite jungling. That means if you see them do something on the other side of the map that maybe you didn't expect, just try and get equal or more value on the other side, especially if you are already there. Do your Krogs, Red Raptors, loop back up to the top lane, get the gank. Hey, now we can go ahead and take that Herald while he takes my blue buff. And again, I'm using we here instead of a Gurren because you got to put yourself in the position of the jungler when you're watching these VODs. Otherwise, you're not going to learn anything. Say, what if I was in this position? What decision would I make? What is my risk assessment here? And does it match to someone who has a representative risk assessment to how I like to play? But if your risk assessment is way off and you keep making overly aggressive moves, you're going to die a lot, you're going to lose a lot, you're going to throw away tempo advantages, and you're just going to be a reactive jungler who's reacting to the tempo of the enemy because you have no control of the map whatsoever. Renekton killed the Sylas, so Gurren goes mid lane, shoves down the Herald, now can take Raptors Krugs, bot lane's going deep, can we help them? Yes, let's do it! And upon respawning, you know the dragon's coming up, you can see the bottom lane shifting on down, so as Jarvan, what would you do in his case? Take whatever camps you can get on your blue side and get to the dragon on time and snag that sucker up. All of a sudden, you're looking at a guy who's 114 versus 400, but has 20 more CS, 2 dragons, and a Herald. That's control. You're either the one that forces the enemy jungler to trail you, to fall behind, to react to all of your plays, or you're the one that is making all of the moves and controlling like a general from above, Darth Sidious in the background. You don't have to be obviously running in and dying at Raptors, or fisting over crabs as 4 people. That is just high risk, bad decision jungling. Make the good decision, and sometimes it's not going to be obvious what you're doing until you reap the rewards later. That being said, it's not like there's a lack of aggression. Look at this Canyon video. He basically did a full clear reset to go and take the top scuttle just like we had in the Karthus example, but he knew Canyon would do the same thing. So instead of taking the scuttle, use his warding totem to get a whole bunch of deep vision and then try to kill Canyon on his Krugs. Canyon was Kha'Zix. Gurren died for it. He lost a 1v1. That is a risk-reward assessment that went wrong. We are all prone to it. We can play things mechanically badly, even though the decision is good. And that's the thing, right? You can make this kind of aggressive decision and go, well, I definitely would have killed him if I hit 1, 2, 3 spells. Which means the decision was good, you just executed it badly. And there's the truth about what is proactive and reactive jungling and why the term doesn't mean much. Instead of thinking about it as good decision followed by good decision to create a flow of the game where you are in tempo control at all times. Yes, this video will explain the 4 ways for you to actually counter the meta, shut them down, and come away with a well-earned victory. First and foremost, you would have seen the champions on your screen now of those that can use the strategy I will be applying in this video. If your champion has any sort of percentage HP damage in their kit, that's huge. More HP on these items means if you have percentage HP, current HP, missing HP, you're going to be able to do a lot more damage to them. Sort of a 1B is you can ban them, but I didn't want to meme this video. I wanted to give you actual strategies. So what you actually need to do as step 2 is to understand the jungle nervous system, the pressure points, item spikes. How do we actually take away their goals, their dreams, their firstborn, and of course their freshly cooked pizza? Ask yourself, what do most of these champions want to do? Well, full clear. What's the alternative that they like to do? Do a red side quadrant gank. And we have seen that from the proactive versus reactive jungling video with Agurin, how he actually handles when enemy junglers clear faster. If your chosen jungler can actually clear faster than them on a full clear, do it. Top to bottom and cover your bottom lane. If your bottom lane's gankable, you will prevent the gank. If your bottom lane is diveable, you will prevent the dive. If your bottom lane is gankable for you, then you gank before them. That's huge. This will force them to go back to base before they are even able to make the gank, before they are able to even take the scuttle crab. Which is exactly what you see here. The Lilia clears faster, is able to position for scuttle, checks Jarvan, says, haha, he's gone back to the top side. Now I can actually go ahead and gank the bottom lane here. Pretty important that she does this. While you watch this masterful dive and you're saying to yourself, wait a second, what if I can't full clear faster than the Hekrims, the Jarvans, the Kayns? Then do a red side quadrant or do a single quadrant clear. More on this in the second example coming up. This then forces the Jarvan now to go to the top side to get that scuttle crab, and because he knows where you started, he knows he can take your Gromp, he can take your Wolves, he can also dive the top lane. But because you go back to base straight away and your support understands this, they will defend your camps. Now you're saying, but what if I don't have a support that understands this? Guess what? 99% of us don't have supports that understand this. So you might lose your Gromp, but it is unlikely because the junglers you're facing who are abusing Gordrinker and Spear of Sojourn are not too intelligent. Also, they're unlikely to go ahead and actually track your second spawn camps as it is. So what we're effectively doing here is playing the chess game with the enemy jungler. As you always know, I play this game, I prefer to preach it this way, and this way you always have control over game outcomes. But as we pause here, you can see that Lilia gets her Gromp, gets her Wolves. The alternative here is, hey, if Jarvan decides to fall back to his second quadrant, right, the Krugs and the Raptors, as you would expect him to do after being shoved out of the top dive as well, you could also gank the top laner should that be something that's available. However, I would not invest too much time into this. Maybe one gank here, one gank there, but I'm not really looking to camp topside. My main goal here is to sacrifice and abuse the pre-2 item spike. And as Lilia goes down to the bottom side of the map where you think she'll do Raptors and Krugs, yes, that's step 3 and we're going through them quickly, but I will expand on each of these in different contexts so you do actually understand how to counter the meta here. And here's the thing, right? You cut the Jarvan off once, you cut the Jarvan off twice. Now he thinks, okay, look, I'm ahead of the Lilia a little bit, or at least equal. Hopefully I can actually go ahead and do something to the bottom lane or the mid lane before she shows up. Well, that's where you're wrong. 99% of the time at around this 5-minute 30 to 6-minute marker, you're gonna have solo laners hitting level 6. You're also gonna have bottom laners, level 4 and level 5, going against each other and fighting and trading. If not, you're gonna see something diveable or gankable. So instead of doing your Krugs before you do this gank, do it now. Because the Jarvan's looking to do Wolves into Gromp for high efficiency, high experience guaranteed, and you can go ahead and gank the bot lane, abuse the sums that you burned earlier, and then fall back to your Krugs. Hopefully your bottom lane don't overstay and die to the Jarvan, that's where you can kind of help shove. You can also keep an eye on it. If he shows up, you can counter gank it. And that's exactly why the Lilia sits where she sits when she's going back to base. Now the Jarvan can't exactly go ahead and do the dragon even if he wants to. Arya's prior, sure, but the risk assessment is way too high for him to actually get away with anything. He might be able to do it, but what would that cost him overall in terms of getting Gordrinker and getting Spear of Sojourn? And here's where things get really tough as Jarvans and Hekrims especially, and Kayns as well. They will always get slippery. They will always get something. You have to do your best to leverage whatever lead you have in the moment to actually continue to cut them off as the early game carries on. In this case, the Jarvan gets the RNG scuttle. We see this. We also know that he's most likely going to take it as we go back to base. Our bottom lane goes back to base. And now you think, hey, I should just farm my jungle camps on the blue side, get the blue buff, right? Because Gromp and Wolves are going to spawn. No, my petit chéri. We're going to wait for the Jarvan to try and go in on the mid lane. Why? Because we kind of expected from 1, the vision we had, but 2, the anticipation. If he doesn't go for it, I'm strong enough that I can just straight up gank in the mid lane. We also have the option that if the Jarvan does say show mid lane and get the kill, he does go to the bottom side and get the kill, and maybe he does do the dragon, we can steal his red buff as well. We can then dive the top lane as well. Our positioning right now gives us outlets, gives us different options to be able to execute based upon what he does. All because we cut him off once, twice, thrice, and now he's stuck in a position to force something, and we have 12 different options to counter it, abusing that pre-1 item, 2 item spike that makes him so damn strong. And as you watch this skirmish play out, this is why I recommend things like your Lilias. Any champion, even an Udyr, can work here that has high HP damage in their kit built in, slows, kiteability, maneuverability. You just want to be something that can avoid the Hecarim spells, can avoid the EQ, can flash and ghost to reposition, can go in and out with their spells. And because you're talking about max HP damage or current HP damage or missing HP damage, you can outposition, outwhiddle, avoid, and with your lead, as they get more HP, it doesn't matter because your damage goes up just as much. 401, 53 CS to 50, he got his, but we denied his ganks. And that's the fourth way here. Do it better than them, or do one thing they cannot. So in this case, we decided to farm better than them, and now because they could not gank, we did it. If you're saying, well, what if I can't do both better like the Lilia here? Well, that's fine. We'll look at a ganking example in a second when we're done with the deer. Now we need to focus on the objective that's going to allow us to snowball and again prevent the gold cash money infusion for the spear drinker builders. So translate that to a blue and a grump and a top lane gank, or translate that to a top lane gank if it shows itself first. Now you're not exactly always going to get the kills here, but that's absolutely fine. In theory, if you do get the kill and you're full HP, we want that herald. We want to leverage the prior mid and the prior top and our fedness. If Javan decides to contest, hey, we can take that fight and hopefully win it. Otherwise, he should go to the bottom side and say, look, I'm going to take the dragon because that's going to counter your percentage HP as a mountain drake, but I don't think he's thinking about that. The guy's too tilted. You're smurfing on him. He's abusing Javan and he's getting destroyed by a Lilia. Think about that. And this is where if you're the Javan in this situation, I don't like coin flipping and running around looking for this herald. Just do a full sequence down, take the blue side quadrant, take the dragon, and take the Lilia's red side quadrant. You are the top tier meta jungler. The thing that makes you strong are those 2 items, and your champion. The champion's really strong, but the champion's extra strong with those 2 items. So go and get your golden experience, son. The Lilia knows that she just needs to take the herald to deny the gold to the Javan. He also has a really big lead, so if he wants to waste his time while we waste our time, that's okay, because our lead will remain, and he won't get anything back. So you can try create prior top lane, you can try create prior mid lane, but if the guy just wants to fight you, fight him and kill him and beat him. Why? Because you have percentage max HP damage, and also you just happen to be in the lead. You could be a Diana here, you can do the same thing, doesn't really matter. As long as you're in the lead, you've done all of these things that I've said so far, you will beat the guy 1v1 at this stage. He's nowhere near Gordrinker, and of course we can take the Herald as well. And we talk a lot about sequencing. I talk a lot about sequencing. It's probably my issue as well. Agurin does it a lot, and we just saw that in that video also. However, there's so much benefit sometimes to saying no. No to Krugs, no to a certain camp. Why? Because now we can head to the bottom side. We know Javan's going to want to get that dragon. We know we have snowballed our bottom lane, so let's give them the Herald, cut out the Krugs, use the Prior to take the dragon. Once we've taken the dragon, because the turret's dead, we can move into his jungle. Once you're in his jungle taking his stuff and leaving wards all over the place, he's going to feel compelled to force something somewhere else, but you can rotate, pick up a cleanup kill, and now we're transitioning into the mid game. He is 78 CS, 121, you're 601, 105 CS. As long as you adhere to good mid game transition farming and macro and team fighting mechanics, which of course all have videos I'll link below, you're going to have an absolute beautiful time actually doing that. But now you're thinking, what if I'm a ganking jungler and I can't do these things that Lily is doing? Or 2, what if I'm playing in an ELO, a lower MMR game, where people kind of just fight and they get fed anyway? How do I actually end up winning that? Well, I've got a few tidbits for you as well. Firstly, you're Rek'Sai, you're against a Javan. Yes, Rek'Sai's strong, but replace Rek'Sai with any ganking jungler whatsoever in the game. Do a Wolves Grump Blue into a mid lane gank, get the kill. You can also do a red side quadrant, exactly the same thing. The idea behind the blue side though was, hey, I know the Javan's full clearing down, so I want to be on that side as well. The downside of doing the gank in this particular fashion is the Javan could always rotate and invade your red if he has bottom lane and now mid lane prio. Which means if you're doing your Krugs and your bottom lane cannot rotate whatsoever, you just give up the red, you swap, you go back to the top side, you got to top scuttle, gank top lane, gank mid lane again. You understand? However, if everyone can rotate, including your mid laner, take the damn fight. Akali's fed from your gank, do your risk assessment calculations, is there a positive outcome that you see happening here? Then we can commit to it, but obviously if the fight looks doomed, it's not worth giving anything to a Javan or a Hecarim. So now we don't farm better than him, but we do gank better than him because Javans are getting stuck in this loop of actually full clearing at the moment. So hey, use that against him, get your gank going, and now the guy's stuck. Now you can see the exact same thing happening again. The Javan's gonna respawn and try and steal your topside Grump and Wolves. You cut him off. Now you know he's gonna fall back to his Krugs and Raptors. We could do what the Lilia did, right? And do the Grump, Wolves, Raptors, cut down and gank the bottom lane, fall into the Dragon. But the big difference here is we're gonna do what he does better, in this case ganking. we know that the Jarvan is going to see that our top lane is pushing in. And most likely after his Krugs, he's going to look to do something about this top lane. So why don't we commit the dive in anticipation of this Jarvan's move? If the Jarvan actually goes Krugs Raptors all the way down, then we get a free dive, a free kill, we can reset, and now we can protect bottom side. At the very least, if he does show up, we get to kill him again, and now our lead, like the linear game, is firmly cemented. And all of this works against the Hecarim as well. Look at some of this footage here. You can gank before Hecarim always. You can counter gank a Hecarim's first rotation always. You can deny his level 6, much like we were doing with the Jarvan. Focus on doing your percentage HP damage, understanding the jungle nervous system. That's everything the Lilia and the Rek'Sai did, understanding when to do the Herald, when to kind of balance the ganking, when to go back to base, not overcommitting and taking unnecessary risks, understanding good jungle decision flow. When is it okay to give up a dragon for the Herald, and what things are you trading that are useful? And obviously, sacrifice and abuse a pre-2 item spike. If you have to give things up, just don't give them stuff. If you can then deny things and kill them in their own jungle because you have such a big lead, do that as well. Now you're thinking, but again, what if it's a Hecarim late game? Pick champions that you know you can peel with. Snowball the win condition like your Draven ADC or whatever ADC you have. Pick your Zac jungles, pick your Cassandra jungles if you're crazy and stupid, and ensure you are peeling and killing the Hecarims with an absolute unforetold righteousness. But you can use these principles and ways of jungling, which I have used myself, to shut down the Gore Drinker Spear of Shogun players and eventually beat them. And when it comes to team fighting, the most important thing I can tell you is this. They're going to want to all in, they're going to want to sustain, thrive, use their cooldowns. It's very, very difficult to face them. So in some games, you might not actually be able to match them when they do get fed and some of your steps fail. Maybe you make a misstep, maybe they just play very well. It happens. This is when you want to leverage that macro advantage. Make sure you are getting damage to turrets. 1 or 2 dragon trades, even when they get their Herald is absolutely fine. Deny the Elder that they can get. But most importantly, recognize the win condition on the member of your team who's able to actually kill them and out-sustain them. And also, Grievous Wounds exists. I hope someone builds it, because otherwise you're gonna have a really, really rough time. Have you noticed the one thing that separates the junglers from the winning team and the losing team in the scoreboard? Every jungler is doing this thanks to the jungle changes and of course the jungle pets. Yes, that's right, it's CS per minute, otherwise known as CSPM. Everyone's complaining about the ganking and the fighting, yet people are still getting 7, 8, 9, 10 CS per minute on junglers. So how exactly is that working, and how can you do it? And if you are a farming jungler, how can we make it so that you can dominate the meta with what you're already good at? We will look at everything you need to know to make farming junglers work in Season 13, and if you aren't a farming jungler, you will just be one after this while still maintaining your ganking and skirmishing ability. Does that sound good? Of course it does. Let's get into it. Now, just as a sort of context, yes, of course, you can farm well and you can, of course, lose. You can have high CSPM and just have a bad time. But the principles I'm going to give you here will work 100% if you are a farming jungler. Think your Karthus, Diana, your Udyr, your Fiddlesticks, anything that enjoys sequencing. If you are something that enjoys cutting the map, ganking and rotating, Hecarims, for example, obviously we're still farming junglers, but even if you're playing something like a Rek'Sai or a Sylas, it can be very easy to get 7 CS per minute while maintaining ganking and fighting tempo. And for this one, we're going to start off with an Udyr again, because last year we used Karthus, and the year before we used Shyvana, and then we've used Nocturne as well. Any farming jungler that have sort of adapted these strategies for into the relevant season, they can basically carry these forward and keep going with it. If you're playing any of those farming junglers that I said and would have shown in the infographic at the beginning, you can use these strategies. Likewise, if you're ganking jungle and off-meta jungler, look at the Zyra game. You can do it here as well. High KP, high CS per minute. I mean, you're not losing out anything, right? So, Udyr over here is basically going to do the full clear. Now, what we don't need to do is watch the full clear in slow motion. We're going to speed up a lot of these sequences because it's the theory of what we're doing, not necessarily the speed at which we watch it. We have bottom lane, don't care. We have mid lane, don't care. We have top lane, don't care. Well, I mean, as we do care because we cross over, we finish the blue side. We do care, but we don't care outside of the context of our first clear. We want to make sure the first clear is done as fast as possible. We want to get 24 CS, hit the Scuttle Crab here, get 28 CS, and that's your first basic concept of a farming jungler. Now, if you happen to be something like the Rengar, that concept is the same, right? We're not a farming jungler, but we still want to accomplish the same goals early. Now, if you paid attention to the gameplay channel, you pay attention to the meta at all, you know that we have things like Hecarims and Dianas and other sorts of junglers that typically full clear, looking and doing sort of red quadrants into gangs, because that allows them to flex potential invades in the 1v1s that they win, flex a bottom lane gank afterwards, and of course, if nothing's available, we can fall back to our blue side and carry on good sequencing. So what is sequencing and why is it important? Sequencing is where we take Gromp first, then Wolves, then Raptors, then Krugs, okay? Why is that important? Because these will now respawn Gromp, Wolves, Raptors, Krugs. The whole idea behind our first clear is to set us up for a sequence in a direction that we enjoy, such that we can keep looping those camps as fast as possible, because we clear quickly. And even though there is a bit of a ganking running around fisting meta, if we can clear quickly, we can rotate quicker because we're not busy farming like say a ganking jungler might be if they decided to try and match our tempo. So what this allows us to do here, and you see the pings on the minimap, that's why I made it big, from the Rengar. We'll just pause it here. He's on the bottom side, 319, basically the same speed as an Udyr, right? Which is something that you should go, well, I don't think of Rengar as a farming jungler, but he goes to the same speed. Exactly. That's why many junglers with the jungle pets and obviously the new reality are able to match these CSPM tempos just by playing intelligently. Now obviously we're going to focus on the Udyr here because I want you farming junglers to first understand that, hey, it's okay to fight, it's okay to rotate, but first and foremost, you must sequence. What we want to do is a full clear plus crab and then a gank. Now obviously if you are something like the Rengar or any sort of Elise, this should be what you're doing. Look for these, I mean that's just tragic. Horrifically sad flash, actually, for the Samira. Perfect though. The Udyr in the meantime has done his gank mid lane. He just did a drive-by. He knows where the Rengar is now, and so he can go for the fight here. The Rengar is going to have to give this up. I hope he does instead of going for a fight, but you know, maybe the Udyr is going to force the action here. The Pike comes over the wall, is going to go on the Karma. The Udyr is going to go and fight the Rengar here, turn back into the Karma now for the chase down. We will have E up in 2. And it's up. Here we go. Let's go. Let's get this done. Come on. Hook. Fistings. Excellent. Auto attacks. Swap into Phoenix. And we get a kill. So this is the important part about the meta as a farming jungler that I want you to pay attention to. And I want you to pay attention to... Wait, we're not done yet. We're not done yet. Rengar is staying out. We're still going for the fight. He thinks he can fight an Udyr with Hail of Blades. Fascinating. Lulu comes over the wall. Flash. Kill. Caitlyn's at a bit of an awkward position. We get the stun. Create the distance. She flashes. She E's to create the gap close. Gets the auto attack. Gets the kill. Pike autos. And we fall. So this right here is great pros and cons, which is why I didn't choose a challenger game. Because sometimes I choose a challenger game, and what happens is it's so perfect, you can't relate to it. Which is great for core examples, right? But if we want to have a fluid discussion about things, it's not always the most important. Now, what we have here, more importantly, is good practices that this guy's going to use to get to 9 TS per minute, with also a few flaws, but excellent destruction of the enemy jungler, which is what we want. So, what was good about that? We did a full clear, we took a crab, we drove by the mid lane, the Rengar decided not to do his crab because he saw a dive, which of course is the right play to make, and then in this case, we just had to leave, and everyone had to leave, but everyone just decided to do an elongated fight. So the champions who can thrive in these sorts of fights at level 4 with no items are the ones that are going to be really good early. Now you might be thinking, well, doesn't that kind of remove certain champions from the meta? Well, I made a gameplay review of an Amumu the other day, and guess what? He beat a Shaco 1v1 in the bottom river, level 4, same thing, full clear crab, kill the enemy jungle 1v1, get a gank off, reset, and now we sequence again, right? So look what he's doing. Gromp, Wolves, Raptors, Krugs. You're farming jungler, this is the way, this is the mantra. The only way you cut this, and again, there are a lot of high elo junglers who are the players, not the champions, where they actually just say, let me cook, I'm not farming. Now look at this, you see here the Mundo has pressed his ultimate button, the cannon is pushed in, but it's a pushed up wave. We are now level 5, we finished 2 sequences, so we should have that juicy 44 CS, but because we got a crab on the bottom side, we have 48 CS, hopefully you can see that. We see the Mundo, we're tracking sums while we're farming, and then we go ahead and do some good chase downs. The Phoenix slows obviously are going to be very nice, and we have, of course, have mega stuns. But because most people are going to say, well, look, obviously, Phoenix Udyr is going to do the gig of farming, right? I went with the Q-Max Udyr to show you a little bit more pain. So, what is the importance of the flex strategy in terms of flex decision-making for farming junglers? Because now, what would most of you do in most ELOs? Most ELO farming junglers, to pause it again, would go back to base here, and then try and sequence again, defend the dragon, defend their blue. No. This is where you get the real big denial. This season is big on taking these kinds of fights, rotating to good fights that you can win. Good fight selection is very, very important. And then, of course, counter jungling. Because most people thought, hey, 20% reduction, it's going to be terrible. So then everyone started counter jungling to see and realize, wait, this is actually kind of good. And we can still easily snack away these camps. We see the Rengar here in the bottom lane. We see our team. And as a farming jungler, your job is to go, whatever happens, happens. Que sera, sera, as it were, to use terrible accents to mock those who say it that way, but that's the whole point, right? The point is to see this and go, okay, I'm watching, nice, I'll take your blue, cool, I'm level 6, all right, I'm going back to base now. You've got it, right? First sequence, we go bottom to top, second sequence, we go bottom to top, and in both cases, we flex the crab, we flex the gank potentially, and then we go back to base. Now what's going to happen is the faster you start sequencing, it's going to leave you even bigger time between the finishing of your sequence and the restarting of your sequence, which is why it's very important to fill that time with as we can quote Stepbrothers, activities. So you don't have bunk beds, you know, in the jungle, but what we do have is blue buffs we can snack. We have fights we can have. We have lanes we can gank. And that will fill the time that you have after finishing Krugs and the Grump respawning again, okay? So that's all concept. Now, the unique thing about farming junglers that makes you super, super strong and potent, and again, anyone can use these principles, any type of jungler. I use these on Zyra and on jungle. That's how I get those CSs. What you do is you go Grump, Wolves, and I'm going to pause it here, and then you go down to the dragon and you snack it. When would this be a good play for us, for example? Well, we see the Rengar on the top side, ganking this top lane. Hopefully you're tracking their CS, but I'll leave a link to a video in the description which will explain exactly how to track this kind of stuff really, really easily, and you should be good to go from that. Here now we have the decision. What is the most important thing in my mind as a jungler? You have two decisions. One, I can rotate, defend, help, and kind of fall back to my quadrant, or do my quadrant and then collapse. I have the Herald I can play with. I know the Rengar went to the top side and realized, hey, there's no blue, so I better dive the top lane. So what we could do is cut the map. That means we've been sequencing beautifully, right? On loop. And then what we do is we say, listen, I'm going to stop sequencing because you know I'm sequencing, and because you're feeling a little bit desperate down already 24 CS from the Rengar's perspective, yeah, I'm going to just cut down here and go ahead and snack this dragon. Or I could go and take all of your stuff, dive bot lane, and then snack the dragon. And if he decides, hey, I'm going to steal your Krugs Red Raptors, he could. But if we have a scanner up and we use it and there's no one there and they don't see us, for the Rengar, that's a very risky play, right? Because he has no idea where we are. He has to call the bluff in accordance with the map. Now, of course, it is warded here, so in this case, he would be safer to do the red. So the Udyr's play works out nicely for him, but you never know that when you're going to make the play, right? Don't results base it. If you decided, oh, look, Rengar's top lane, I better just go and take all of the stuff, then yes, you'd be seen. However, when you have high rotational ability, as you do when you're Udyr, well, I didn't know that was going to happen, then you can always move into those fights, and as Hecarim, you can also move into those fights. As Warwick, you can move into those fights. But this is very much the farming jungler way. Have you noticed? He didn't look to cut the map. He just said, I'm gonna go Raptors, I'm gonna go red. Rengar died being an idiot. If Rengar didn't die, I was gonna kill him for being an idiot, but now that he is dead, regardless of whatever outcome it is, I'm gonna do the Herald. I'm gonna cut the map, but instead of cutting the map here, right, we can cut the map running through this way. Now he decided to do the Raptors into the red first, because obviously the idea was to kind of shadow the Rengar. We finished the Herald, we could just hit the plant down to the Wolves to see if something else happened there. And in the meantime, again, I do think this cut here could have been super juicy, but it's an active decision to say I want to help top, I want to sequence and get Herald, or do I want to counter jungle red side and get Dragon? Based upon the map state and the game state, you will make that decision. Which lane do you want to kind of get fed? In this particular case, my ADC is looking like a bit of a lemon, and my Chad top lane is looking like, well, a bit of a Chad. And now you're looking at this, look at this, there's no Grump, there's no Wolves, we sequenced, did a Herald, walked into the jungle, went back to base, and there's no Grump up yet. We're still waiting, our farming has already increased so quickly. So what do? Before we go farming again, we say, can I gank? Can I commit an action? Can I take an objective? Can I make something happen? We're using the Phoenix here, obviously she stopwatches it, so we're gonna move on to the Caitlyn. This is the important one we want to kill, she forces a flash and a kill, and now there's a full wave we can snack. Where are we getting our CS here? Strategic sequencing. Rengar says, well, I guess I can just kill top lane. So what did he do here from the last time we saw him? He has red, he obviously sequenced the whole thing up and went to the top side. So what the Udyr can say is, well, good thing I took the Herald, and I can use this for my own cash money infusion right now and really get strong. At the same time, you could also just sit on it and wait until, 11, 12 minutes and go to another lane. But as a farming jungler knows, what's the most important thing for us? Our own econ, getting that gold cash money. This won't break the tower, obviously, but it will get it pretty low. And from this, we can go to the dragon because, again, Rengar sequence bottom to top. And now he's going to be coming out of base with more itemization. So we should probably do this quickly as our bottom lane comes out of the base fresh with itemization and the wave has crashed. Take the objective, and then we can piss off and go back to farming. Literally, that's it, my friends. That's a 12-minute game plan. And what you're seeing here is a 2-1-3 jungler who didn't rotate to all of these scenarios that I'm kind of suggesting that we would, and instead just focused on hardcore sequencing. So what's stopping you, whatever farming jungler you're playing, from doing the same thing? If you're Nocturne, same thing, right? Because you're waiting for your ultimate. You're playing around your ultimate. That's what we're looking to do. Rengar now, of course, resets, as we said, going to be on the bottom side based upon the tracking and the showing top lane. So the Rengar showing bot lane will go back here. We're on the Raptors. Now again, we have a split in our decision making, but it's cookie cutter easy. Do I go to the Krugs and then look to gank the top lane again? Do I go to the Krugs and then look to do the crab into the blue? Same kind of loop. But this RNG crab is up right now. And with farming junglers, it can be very easy to get stuck in this full lap sequencing. Of course, if you want to camp bot lane and dragon, you're probably going top down, right? Just depends on what your philosophy is and what you want to accomplish. At the same time, going bottom to top can work fine because you gank, you show, you reset, you gank first, and then you fall back to sequencing, which also works out quite nicely because you know that while you're sequencing, you have fixed the lane in its control. When you farm first and then go for the gank, something could happen whereby you have to cut your farming and sort of rotate into that situation, which isn't always what you want. So here now, we're on the Raptors, of course. We decide, look, with Rengar, their outside in rule dictates I must take the outermost thing from my jungle, Crab, blue, and of course there's a gank possibility in the mid lane here with the Cassio. Now, this won't work out too well because of course it's a Cassio. She wants you to turn and run. She has miasma, she has percentage damage, she's gonna chunk you. Look at this, look at this. She already has a Rod of Ages, she's quite tanky to reference the X-Peke. He's too tanky from many, many years ago. Rengar's on the bottom side here, that's fine. The point is, once you get to 12-15 minutes, all you're looking to do is be as strong as possible. Now, the Rengar is 4-3-3, but his sequencing hasn't been good. If your sequencing can be good and you can do what the Rengar is doing, you're gonna have a much better time. Now, obviously, when the bottom lane tower falls, you can expect people to start to rotate like supports and ADCs. So you do have to be aware when we're counter jungling here, they're gonna start to kind of move around the map. Don't greed yourself for a crab, just let the crab fall. Cut away from the Mundo, use your speed, your escape Hekrims, most junglers can do that, Shyvana's as well. Fiddlesticks might be dead, but you're probably sucky anyway. We've gone back to base, and we're going to the top side, because the Krugs are available. We're gonna get to the Krugs after basing, before the Grump would even spawn. So this timer is very, very important. Remember, 2:15, take it, look at 2:15, it's the start of your sequence, there it is. So now we're gonna say we took this now at 40 minutes, we know at 16:15, we're gonna have a Grump again. Well, 16:20, right, because we have to take it. So that's the kind of stuff you need to track when you're looking at your direction out of base as a farming jungler. In the meantime, we basically go, look, I could have taken the Krugs and go bottom side for the blue and ended up in the same situation. But instead, I'm just gonna base because I'm low in case they invade, and I'm gonna go ahead and take this, cut into the mid lane, get the gank. Now there's so much downtime between sequencing, we can afford to go and make some good plays. Now, what I want you to look at in terms of a top to bottom game, like if we start top side and go down, and maybe with a bit more of that reaction rotation sort of gameplay, that's probably more of what you might be looking for as a ganking jungler. I do recommend the Diana gameplay video on the gameplay channel whereby that's what she did, and it was a really good, perfect example of how to do this as well. A little bit of waffling here, not a fan of that. The whole point though is to make sure we are as strong as possible for this moment in the game. We go top lane, we activate the ghost, we get cleaved, we don't really care, we're gonna get the stun. And now we're gonna get in front of AD Udyr, I guess. Very strong. What have we noticed about a few of the things when he showed up for ganks, right? What have we noticed? He has held and absorbed waves and pushed waves, not too much this game, and the counter jungling hasn't been over the top, but if you can hold and push waves and of course counter jungle more, then you're gonna have an even better time. Oh look, you're in the river. That's just not natural, man. I'm not gonna lie to you, that's just not okay, but it is what it is. And if you're the Rengar in this particular situation, put yourself in my shoes if I'm the Zyra or the Ornn. You think I'm sitting in the bush as a Zyra against a Rengar? Do you think I'm gonna sit there and say, well, he's coming this way, I guess. If he's ahead of me, no. So the Rengar's making a dumb play. You can't say, well, look at the AD Udyr. Well, he farmed and got strong. He has 8 out of 17 KP. It's less than 50%. It's not like he's run over the map and gotten all the kills. Of course, the Hekrim gameplay that I put out as well showcased that. There's so many ways to play the game right now. But if you're farming jungler, maintaining good sequencing, 147 CS in your elo, you're gonna have so much more gold than everybody. Don't think that you have to rotate to every scenario. Rotate to the good fights, to the fights that have lesser risk. Or just gank before you sequence or after you sequence. And if you see a jungler doing something random somewhere, then you of course can cut and take objectives, you can cut and counter jungle. You don't always have to finish the sequence. So that's the most important thing. Sequence with serious intent and then cut when you think necessary. Now we've gone for the wolves here. This is a good example. We've gone for the wolves. Ideally we would probably sequence, well, you want to go wolves grump, right? Or you go for the grump and you go for the wolves and you're carrying going up. But our sequencing is no longer optimized because now we have to use our lead to carry this game. We're equal in gold, right? So what allows us to bust open this game as a farming jungler? I'm glad you asked. We're firstly going to set up for this dragon, make sure you maintain objective control. Then we're going to run to the mid lane and say, hey, that's a wave that needs to be pushed out, and you take all. Hey, I have a herald I can use to bust down a tower. Okay, force rotations. I'm going to clear the vision here. I'm controlling the rivers, the swoop method. We talked about this in the video, how you must jungle in season 13, which of course is a real add-on to this. I try to make every video sort of interconnected. Now we're waiting. She pushes up, she E's, we don't really care, we activate the ghost, we get this done. We're exhausted again, that's not really gonna do anything. Pyke gets a kill, Miasma hits us, we reposition, we don't stay to take the bad fights. Now we look, we're gonna reposition. There's a full-on fight going on here. We are the absolute strongest beast here. Can we sustain up on Raptors perhaps? Yes, that's a good idea. Let's drag and secure some more camps. No hesitation in the farm. 166 he has. Karma moves up from the mid lane, hopefully you saw that. Can we make the pick here? Can we force the fight here? We have the cannon in the top lane. Let's go. Activate the button. Okay, when you have damage, when you're strong, when you farm, when you know you're champion, know when you are fed enough to be able to make this kind of play. And if you're a farming jungler, and you're a Karthus, and you are a Shyvana, and you're a Nocturne, and you don't know at what point you become this level 13 huge spiking menace, well, you need to learn that. You need to learn that, because look at this. We just ran over the game. We were equal in gold. Now we're up 2.2k. Here we go. Flash is burned from the anticipated hook. We have obviously unstoppable if we wanted to use it. And of course now she ults. We avoid that ult actually beautifully. That was a really great sequence by the Udyr. That was a really good sequence to avoid all of the Cassiopeia spells and get the kill. We now have 11,000 gold at 18 minutes. The next highest in the game actually looks like the Rengar at 8.2 thousand gold. So the enemy jungler's done a good job. We didn't focus on him, but if you are the kind of jungler who's this Rengar, and you think, well, damn man, what are my team doing to this Udyr? The Udyr just sequenced, chose some very specific good moments to gank and fight, got to the mid game, and just ran it over because he had so much more gold and so much more experience than anybody else. As a farming jungler, this is your goal. I hope this enlightens you just a little bit. And don't forget that, once you do that, as long as you adhere to good macro and understand exactly how to close games out properly, you will take the previous scene where we were to where we are now, 34-16. And look at that gold lead, look at the KDA. We've gone full AD. We are in total and utter control of this game. There's nothing the enemy team can do, and that's exactly what you're looking to do when you play champions like this. What if I told you that getting to Challenger was as easy as the players say it is? At least it can seem that way when I tell you that a player like this can get 80% win rate by only putting in 20% effort. Let's just start with the first clears of the game I'm going to show you that's going to illustrate this principle. That if you use 20% of the jungle principles I show you on repeat, you will definitely get more wins. This player is one such player who's managed an 80% win rate on Sylas jungle despite the nerfs, and instead of worrying about, hey, should I do objectives? Hey, should I farm? Hey, should I do 1, 2, 3? He just ganks. But then how does he end this game and all his other games with 7 CS minute if he's only focusing on 20% of jungling? Now, as you watch the Sylas go for this level 2 cheese gank on the bottom side, now you start to think, well, this is just a cheese strategy. No, that's not what I'm talking about. So let me explain this in a very simple way. When you have, say, 5 different core principles that make up all of jungling, most people try to min-max all of these things all the time. They try to consistently improve in every aspect and in such slow down their wins and climb. When you ask a challenger jungler, hey, how did you get there? Their response is usually, just do this. What they're saying is if you're playing a champion and you're winning with it, keep playing that champion. If you're doing a certain strategy in a clear that's working, just keep doing that strategy. Some junglers will just say, look, I'm not ganking, I'm just gonna farm about 300 CS a minute, and then I'm gonna do something. And they do that every single game, and they know how to make it work, so they win games. They don't worry about all the other intricacies. Overthinking is the enemy of you climbing. Essentially, what we're talking about is jungling smarter, not harder. If you want help implementing this information into your own game, I have a free jungle improvement resource and a dedicated program where we have jungle video courses, jungle coaching VOD libraries, weekly coaching classes, Q&As, patch note rundowns, private high elo streams, as well as a private jungle Discord. And I know how to make junglers convert from low elo to gold to emerald to diamond to master plus. If you want to climb faster than anybody you know, jungle diff every game you play, head to virkayu.gg. So we have the Sylas who does his cheese gank and then falls back to his Crocs and Raptors. Yeah, there's a risk of vertical jungling, but why would the enemy jungler take that when the Sylas could easily base and come back out with, Dark Seals and M-Terms? So he just ganks in the mid lane, gets a kill on the Tristana even though the Tristana saw him, and now he's going to do what all junglers would do in this case, fall back to the blue side. This Sylas says my entire mantra, the thing I'm just going to do no matter what, is gank, invade, fist, and fight. And while you watch him do that, grab some kills and help his Tristana a little bit, the whole entire overarching principle of this is what you might have heard from business where 20% of your product will net you 80% of your revenue. Or, in YouTube's case, 20% of your topics will net you 80% of your views. So you should focus on those. So despite those statistics suggesting I should make tier lists all the time, fortunately, I will not do that. You can apply to your jungling and League of Legends as well. If you have 2 or 3 champions that you're playing and that's 20% of your entire champion pool, focus on those 2 to 3 champions. We tell you this all the time. If you have a certain game plan that's working every single game with a certain champion, keep doing it until it stops working. Reap the rewards, the LP gains, the LP revenue from focusing on the 20% of jungling that's really working for you. Now, this won't always necessarily mean you become the most complete jungler, but all your other things will kind of go up with it. And then of course you can shift focus over time if you want to improve other areas of your jungling. However, if your sole goal is to climb and win, which it is for most of us, then why would you ever overcomplicate your life by implementing Karthus strategies on a Sylas? Focus on the 20% that's working, stop worrying about the rest, and they will fall into place. And you can see that here, the guy comes out of base, there's nothing to gank, so I guess I'll do my blue side quadrant, but then I'm going straight back to ganking, I swear it, I'm gonna do it. And he does it. He gets a kill, Echo rotates, shoves a lane, and then the Sylas, normally do we go counter jungling? What would Virkayu tell me to do now? Maybe we go gank top lane? No, this guy says, I'm gonna kill the Echo. I'll die, but I will snowball more than him. And then he's going to leave base and say, you know what, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and gank bottom lane again. Now, if you're in the Echo situation, how would we apply this, lazier 20% effort jungling in order to win this game? Well, if you were playing Echo and you knew you wanted to spam gank as well, then maybe you would pick a different lane to spam gank and you would kind of match up a little bit in that case. If you're playing a Karthus or Fiddlesticks or a more farming focused jungler, you just farm. Sure, you can set up some counter ganks and things like that as you watch a Sylas eviscerate the enemy bot lane yet again, but the idea is you stick to the thing that works for you and your champion and don't let the enemy jungler compromise that strategy. Yes, I love to teach dynamic pathing, adapting, cutting off the enemy jungler, jungle denial, and all of those things do work, but those are the things that are secondary to your core game plan and play style. If you focus on the shit that works, the other shit will fall into place nicely. Like the Sylas now, by killing everybody, he goes and does his red side quadrant. He doesn't care about objectives, he doesn't think about objectives because he says, look, if I do my strategy correctly and just fall back to this other stuff, when I'm bored and there's nothing else to do, then objectives are irrelevant in the conquest of my game. I mean, you could stop after your red side quadrant and maybe float up to the Herald, deny the potential snack by the Echo. You could go ahead and just do the dragon after the bottom lane gank, or because you just want to gank all the time because, not lazy, but specifically focused 20% jungling, he ganks bottom lane again. Now they're kind of tilted, they're really far behind, he's snowballing and the Zyra is snowballing. You see where this kind of works. If you were farming jungling in a Karthus situation, you could just full sequence gank bot lane, full sequence gank bot lane. Hey, top lane, mid lane, don't care about you, full sequence gank bot lane. You do it again, and again, and again, game in, game out, and you will see climbing results because you are mastering that 20% and focusing on that which actually gives you wins. Now, if you're following this game and it's basically, pick a lane to gank, fist the enemy jungler over and over again, and fall back to our camps. We're not interested in counter jungling or objectives because that would take time away from the stuff that's actually helping me get fed. Are you starting to follow me? The Echo does, the Herald thinks, hey, I should go counter jungling. The Sylas comes out of base and says, you know what, I better do some hello, sir, shoves him out, gets a kill. Now we can go top lane. Anything? Nothing? Okay, back to base. Now I could go farm all my camps, but the Echo's holding mid lane. Hey, let's go fighting again. And he's probably not thinking any of those things, he's just thinking, hey, let's go fighting again. This is a magnificent strategy if your champion pool allows it. If you're playing Briar, if you're playing Sylas, then this is the kind of stuff that it can help you win. Lee Sin as well, Nidalee as well. In order to reach your goal elo, your peak elo, sure, it's better to focus on becoming a total jungler, which is the way I teach it and the way I personally play. But you still focus on one core strategy as the center point of all of that, yes? And you're seeing that with the Sylas fighting as well. We're forcing the issue here because we can, because we have the lead to do so. Now that there's no one else to kill or fight or gank, might as well take some camps from the enemy jungler, some jungle denial. Now the enemy bot lane is going to be shifting on down over again. Why don't I, just kill their fillers very quickly? This is obviously great for champions like this, the Shakers of the world, those who can actually go ahead and do these things, the Evelyns as well. But if you're not one of those champions, this cannot be your strategy. This guy just decided to max his ganking and fighting all the way up to the top, leave all the other stuff at the bottom because he was getting results with it. If your champion doesn't synergize with it, you won't. Now you go back to base again, we've got our blue side quadrant up, we see the Echo forcing things. That means we can collapse. We don't avoid these scenarios because we can't actually fight them. If you're something that cannot fight them, you will have to look for other outlets. And you can see how he's utilized the champion choice to synergize with what he wants to focus on to absolutely decimate. There's not a lot of jungle theory going on here. Sylas go big lead, Sylas now ruffle stumps everybody, and this guy won 3 games in a row, sub 20 minutes. Let's skim through another one to show you how he does this and replicates it in a different matchup. In this case, a level 2 after the red buff isn't possible, so he does Krugs, looks bottom lane, no gank possible. Okay, I guess that's the risk of a level 2 gank, so I'm gonna go to the mid lane, and that one is successful. Jarvan is forced to cut his clear short to rotate, picks up a kill. but the Sylas is winning because he's forcing the enemy jungler to compromise their own playstyle. Now to Jarvan's strong, Jarvan will succeed at this. And then he comes out of base and you think, okay, now he's gonna do it. Never mind, he ganks mid lane yet again. Okay, it's at this point, we know we've taken the red side now, we've killed Kindred twice, we can go to our blue side after Scuttle, yes. Or maybe we could dive top lane, that's a possibility. No, I know that the Jarvan did his blue side, I know he reacted to try and kill me, I know he's gonna be on his red now. So being consistent with his hyper-aggressive ganking and invading playstyle, which he's just hyper-focusing on, he does in fact end up getting killed, which is a possibility when you have this game style. Now he will do his Wolves and Grump upon respawning as Jarvan kills the mid lane. And in this particular case, you think, okay, the guy's gonna do his Grump. Maybe, no, he sees the Syndra going back to base in the mid lane and says, forget the Grump, I'm gonna try and kill her again. Now you're gonna watch him fight, you're gonna watch the team rotate, you're gonna watch him kill the bottom lane, go back and do some Krugs, and then kill the bird. Yes, you will eventually die again, and this is why you're seeing this playstyle as not being a very cohesive meta playstyle, because it's not efficient. You don't have a lot of experience econ, you're giving the enemy kills as much as you're getting your own kills for your team, but if you look at the lanes and the KDAs, you see, I can understand why this would actually get the team ahead, and all he has to do is keep doing it, keep the pressure on. And what you're seeing next, there's no jungle theory for this. I'm not telling you to do this. This is not actually a very good way to jungle. But this player has picked a champion and an absolutely psychopathic Arkham Asylum bound jungling style that works with him, his teammates, the server he's on, and he's able to execute it every single game because look, he has more gold than the enemy jungler. His champion allows him to keep fighting, and he only falls back to camps here or there, and maybe objectives here and there when there's honestly no fighting to be done. It is the baseline upon which he jungles. He's effectively jungling in a very lazy way. Farming, sequencing, thinking, all those things are too difficult. I'm just gonna be hyper aggressive, I know I can win, and I'll keep taking those fights. If you were to ask him, how do you get challenged at doing this? He would tell you just to gank and be aggressive the whole time. Whereas someone like a Gurren in that video we covered would say, no, take good jungle decisions. Farm as a baseline, look where the enemy jungler is, make good jungle decisions about what's available and when you can actually go in and go out. In my case, I like to reverse clear down or, try to mislead the enemy jungler in some capacity, but what that allows me to do is always be on the opposite side of the enemy jungler. My goal is to never be on the same side. This allows me to ensure that they're wasting their time doing other things, they have no idea what my clear is, and I get their second spawn Raptors, second spawn Krugs quite a lot. I can even gank a side lane before they show up, and now they're stuck in a zone with not much to do. I like making enemy junglers be confused about where I am and have nothing to do. Those are the baselines of my game plans. Now let me ask you this, how many times have you been in a game where the enemy jungler just spam ganked like the Sylas, got fed, and you said, how is he getting fed? We can see him, we know what he's doing, he's just ganking. Why is he getting fed? Because lane is after lane. And if you're AFK farming and not really paying attention to it and not taking his stuff away, he will win out. If you try and rotate to him every single time and try and collapse every single time, you're playing his game and he will win out. But then if we shuffle to the other side of the coin, you will understand that, hey, I've been doing a balanced jungling approach, I clear, I counter jungle, I get objectives, I'm ganking my lanes, and this guy's just AFK farming. All it took was one bad gank and the guy's now up 10 CS over me, counter jungles my whole top side, takes a herald, and all of a sudden we're in this mid-game fight and the guy just wipes us. That's not fair, he didn't do anything to deserve it. Well, I've done this as well. The complaint, yes, but also the farming. Because I will see you doing all of these actionable things, I physically cannot do that with my champion, so I will farm, take what I can, counter jungle where I can, get objectives, not really interested in high KP at this stage, but by the time the mid-game comes around, I still have the most gold in the game, the most experience, and I can win those mid-game fights. Why does it work? Because instead of trying to be a ganker, which my champion is not, I focus all of my effort on the strength of the champion in this particular moment, in this particular game, in this particular matchup, which might be just counter jungling and farming and sequencing, denying their actions in terms of hyper-aggression, and one time showing up for a counter gank and I have the same amount of gold, shut them down, win the lane, get the objective, get the plates, and now the game is in my favor. That, my friends, is the point of this video. Figure out what style you have as a game plan, figure out which champion allows you to enact that, and times it by 10. Focus all of your effort on 20% of the jungling that's actually working for you. Focus all of your effort on the champion pool that is actually netting you results and stop playing the champions which are not. 20% of what you're doing as a jungler in your League of Legends career is responsible for you climbing. Figure out what that 20% is and double down, triple down, 10 times down on that strategy and let the rest of them fall to the side as secondary objectives. They will fall into place like you saw with the Sylas, you still get your camps, you still eventually get objectives, but you're focusing on that stuff that actually nets your result. And every jungler for this is different. But at the end of the day, we do want to be total players, we do want to understand how to jungle every sort of aspect, and we need to figure out which of these things we're best at. In this video, I will go over every single jungle route you will need to know for Season 13, no matter what champion you're playing, and what you're gonna need to consider when you're trying to optimize your best early game plan given the new meta that is upon us. We need to ensure the routes that you are doing, no matter what champion you're trying to play, obviously classical junglers will still be the best, are viable for the Season 13 meta. Not old school variants like a 4-camp inner clear, please just don't do it. And also remember for each clear to keep in mind adaptable pathing. If you are a 4 to 5 to 6 camper, especially the latter two, and you see action you can influence, focus on that and don't stick to your clears blindly. A 6-camp intended clear can become a 4-camper if you can see and realize an invade is possible on the enemy jungler, or maybe a gank on the bottom lane looks juicy and thick and fresh. Now first up we have the 6-campers, because that is the one that everyone is talking about. All of a sudden, anyone can full clear, anyone can basically do red all the way to the blue side, or blue all the way to the red side. Don't forget we do have the Raptors Krugs red into that blue grub wolves, or the Raptors Krugs red into the wolves blue grub. You can shift that based upon your sequencing. The whole concept though is that you do all 6 camps, and if you're being leashed, the stereotypical way of doing it is still the best way. The issue is that some junglers who think they can full clear just because someone tweeted it, yeah, they can't necessarily do that. If you're doing a 334 clear and getting the scuttle, that is now an option for you. That's great. But if you are a jungler that isn't meant to full clear, meant to be a bit more active, why? All that means is you can maybe throw in 1 extra camp, still get the gank off and still control the scuttle or do your invade. We'll talk about that in the other clear routes. The most notable thing about jungle experience is that we really want to stack our jungle item. We want those 40 treats to become 20 as soon as possible so that we can use it on champions and get the upgraded 900 damage. Remember, I've covered all the jungle changes last week already. I'll link that below. So that means a full clear really sets you up for a second sequence, which again is another 4 treats, plus the random ones that are going to show up every 60 seconds. However, if you're a normal jungler, some junglers haven't actually had a huge benefit in their full clear speed. Some are a little bit slower. Some can physically do it now, but it's still not that quick. For example, a Zed can do a 758 full clear, while a Camille might think, hey, someone said I could do it, so I'm gonna do it. And then they're busy on their gromp about to go to blue, and then Zed shows up, but Zed didn't factor in the lane prio nor the PvP nature of it, and, you know, Camille says call an ambulance, but not for me. On the other side, you expect the Mundo to full clear by 3 minutes, and then invade a Kha'Zix who also thinks he can full clear, but he is inherently slower than a Mundo. And now what's happening is junglers who couldn't do a full 6-camp route can now do it, albeit a little bit slower. Some who did it in 315 will still be doing it at 315, and some will be doing it slower or faster than 315, like your Mundos and your Zeds. So it will depend on your champion's skill set. For example, we can have an Ahri do a red side at a decent clear. She could very easily do a full clear in a solid time and still gank the lane. The decision here to cut to look for the dive isn't always necessarily the best one, but it showcases the importance of adaptability when you are doing a 6-camp route. Obviously, then she can fall back down. This will be your standard way to play if you don't adapt, but at the same time, please just don't do it for the sake of it. If you are 330 full clearing, losing a crab and not getting action, another jungler who's 3-minute full clearing is getting double scuttle action, is ganking lanes before you, and so you really need to think about doing another type of jungle route, and that could be a 5-camper. And obviously in this case, the junglers who can effectively do a red Krugs, Raptors, Wolves, Blue into a ganking crab, and then fall back to the gromp, you may still do that, but historically that has been some of the worst win rate data in all of jungle routes history because of how long it took the Krugs to be killed. Now, with the Krugs being easier to kill, even at the expense of their experience, it still might not be the best option, because what we can do here is 5-camp, gank, crab, go back down to the bottom crab, take a bottom lane gankings, and then loop back up for the Krugs, the second spawn Raptors, the second spawn Wolves, and the second spawn Gromp. That will be the best optimized 5-camp clear. However, what this does enable us to do is think dynamically because of what Riot wanted with the change to the Krugs, enabling more diversity in our early routes. It can very easily allow you to snack that Krug camp and skip a Raptor or a Wolf camp. Why would you do this? Well, as you saw, if you're against a Zed or a Mundo type jungler who are done at 3 minutes, and you're going to be done at 325, 320, 330, that's more than enough time for them to invade you, kill you, take your stuff maybe, take a crab, double scuttle you, and gank the lanes. So you really don't want to be caught with your pants down. You want to make sure you speed up your clear to match them, which is what we've been doing for the longest time. This is your matchup knowledge. This is how we play the jungle. So what you do is you say, well, instead of skipping the Krugs and the Gromp, because those are the juicy edge camps, I'm going to make sure I take both of those, and I'm going to skip the Raptors if it takes too long for me to take, or if they're easy for me to take, I can see up the Wolves and just fall back to them later. And we saw Graves do that quite a lot in Season 12 as well. So this is my hidden OP route that you can go ahead and try if your champion doesn't really do a 6-camper with the best time frame. Remember, you still want to get out ahead of the crab, you still want to get one gank off beforehand, you don't necessarily want to finish at 330, take a crab and base. That just exacerbates issues over the past 2 years. It makes you an ostrich jungler, and yes, for example, a Warwick who does a 4 camper, Kindred who does a 4 camper, you can easily throw in that Krug camp now, make it a 5 camper, and have a very similar tempo to what we used to, which means obviously a sooner level 4, more ability to fall back to better treat snacking, better stacking of our smite. All of it is good, more gold, more experience. So think about that if your 6 camper just isn't cutting it. Next up, we have the 4 camp clears, which is what I just mentioned, and very much you can still do these, and you still should do these if you happen to be the champions on your screen now. Yes, because Krug is easy to take, you could look to do that kind of stuff, but why not just do the typical red-blue side, and that gives you so much time to gank top, to gank mid, to still invade, to fall back to that crab if all of that works. You can do 2 things instead of 1 thing and still double scuttle. And then because the Raptors and the Krugs are easier to secure now, the jungle item does give you a bit of AoE damage, but it can only do so much. You can afford to fall back to those if you happen to be those Warwicks, Kindreds, and so on, and take them with relative ease. And then obviously you have all of those bottom lane decisions around that double scuttle should you be blessed enough to secure it. Now a nice new OP route against those really fast full clear junglers like your Zeds, when you just simply cannot match it and you're worried about those invades because there's nothing for them to do. If there's no lane to gank, no crab to take, they're gonna invade you. Even if the counter jungling has been nerfed, strong junglers will very easily still be able to snack all of your stuff away because they're slower, but you can't fight them, so you have to leave. In that case, you can simply do your red, Krugs, do your blue, do your Grump. This is an older clear, and the point is not to stop after the Grump, but you could. You can stop after the Grump, you can gank the bottom lane, you can gank the mid lane, you could do the invading. It's not the best clear to do, but it allows you to secure the Krugs and the Grump, both edge camps, and have them respawn. More experience, more gold. The benefit though is that you get to reverse clear away. You now snack the wolves, you snack the raptors if you can, but you don't have to. You then take the top scuttle, and of course you can gank the top lane, the lane you really want to snowball in this patch. That leaves the enemy jungler on the bottom side without you, and remember, if you want to avoid them, this is great, but it's also great if you say start on the red, and they start on the red also, and they're going to the top side and you actually want to fight them, hey, then you can 4 camp reverse up and meet them there and do the fisting, do the fighting, and do the battling. Now we are no stranger to 3 camp clears, and all of us know the stereotypical ones of the red Raptors Krugs, or the red Krugs Raptors into the ganks and the mid lanes and the side lanes. You can also do the really old school Season 9 thing if you're a Season 9 veteran, wolves, red, Krugs. I don't really recommend that anymore obviously, but you could in theory do it. However, what are the benefits of this route? It allows you 3 camp into action. With the delay in the scuttle spawn, that will leave a lot of dead time, and the issue obviously is if you gank the side lane, what if you're getting counter jungled? And yes, you can still get counter jungled. Yes, I have seen some vertical jungling in the VOD review I've done today, and then they would cut back and take your blue side. Now, because of the time sink, they might not exactly be able to do that, but if the enemy team has prior, they will. And so if they start on the same side as you and you do this play, it works out better, because then of course you can cut across, gank the mid lane, invade the red side if you want, take your top scuttle, and obviously protect your blue side. That is the dream, that is what we want. However, another variant of this is obviously just been doing a blue side quadrant into the opposite side. Same thing basically, just on the other side. But you can also flex into the side lane just as easily. Obviously that leads to mind games of the enemy jungler meeting you meeting them, but now you won't meet them on the crab. You see the arrows meet on the crab here, but now you're just gonna meet in PvP. So in that sense, we could simply skip that crab, gank mid lane, get the bottom crab, look to gank bottom lane, and then fall back to our red side. Or you could simply invade their red side as well. That is a possibility, but the one that we know and the one that we trust and the one that we're used to seeing is the red Raptors Grump. Obviously from this, we are simply going to go ahead and use our flex clear into controlling an invade, ganking on the mid lane and ganking on the bottom lane. The downside to this clear now is that we could easily fit in a 4th camp, which is why I think the 4th campers are a nice spicy pick for you. That crab will rarely be up by the time you finish this action, but obviously the benefit of this was the classical reverse variant where you do your red Raptors Grump, you do your blue wolves, you fall back to the top side, and now instead of going straight to the crab, you could loop in that Krug camp as well. It's really up to you. It's going to be all about which lanes you want to gank, when do you want to gank them, and what the enemy jungler wants to accomplish. Don't forget you can also do buff Grump, that is a classical, it will never die. At the same time, you better have a good game plan for what you want to do after that gank because, as I said, the 315 isn't up, so you might end up giving up a same side 315 just to invade, gank mid, and take the bottom side. That's absolutely fine as well, but I do recommend the full clear 5 camp, 4 camp variants as probably better given the treat meta. Finally, yes, you can still do level 2 and level 1 camper cheeses. You can do Pike Jungle, Blue Grump, and gank bot lane. You could do Pike Jungle and do the red and just gank bot lane. These things still exist, but they are inherent downsides. You are essentially coin flipping your entire existence with someone who could full clear by 3 minutes. You'd be level 2, they're level 4. Don't recommend it, but you can do it, and it's worth noting that you can still do your level 1 invades, provided you know you have kill threat, and you can stack their camp without pressure, so pay attention to lane prio. And there you have it, these are all of the routes you will need to know for Season 13. Which one works for you and which one doesn't, that will depend on your game plan, how active you want to be, how farming you want to be, what champion you're playing, and exactly how fast you can clear. You want the treats as soon as possible, so keep that in mind. If you're doing shortened clears for action, make sure the action is very much aggressive and very much succeeding. Because if you don't, you were better off doing an extra camp or two before that scuttle, before an invade. Let me know what champions with what routes you are planning on testing this week, and of course in this patch, and of course in this season. Hopefully this gives you all of what you need to know for the remainder of the season, because really that's every clear in the game right now. Look, it's no secret in the history of jungle clears, the red side quadrant has always been the best. Even during hardcore farming metas where full clearing is the best, those aggressive junglers have always found a home in doing some form of a Red Raptor's Kha'Zix variant. And as you all know, it's about ganking bottom lane, as you have just seen. However, the beauty of the red side quadrant clear isn't that we go ahead and gank bot lane only, it's that it can almost do absolutely everything else in terms of decision making. You want to gank bottom lane, you can do that. You want to gank mid lane, you can do that. Enemy jungler started top side, full clearing down, you can invade that. Enemy jungler decided to stop bottom side going up, you can gank mid lane, cut up, and invade. And if you don't want to invade, then you can still go gank top lane, get prio for scuttle, and fall back to your blue side. However, when this route becomes meta, it opens up a lot of other possibilities in terms of how to jungle, map read early, and when you're thinking about matchups. And it's not just to gank bot lane as we all think, because yes, we want to gank bot lane, we reset, we protect our blue side, enemy jungler does their red side, we take away their gank. That's been the underpinning meta clear for this year. However, it doesn't just work on the blue side, it works on the red side as well when you want to gank top lane, but the beauty isn't in just that first rotation, it's about all the domino effects from it. For example, this Nidalee goes to gank mid lane. The Kha'Zix is doing the same, clear, sees it, cuts in for the counter gank. You have to assess your 2v2s. In some situations it works out really well, in other situations it doesn't. In this one, the Nidalee is able to come out on top for the 2v2. In this example here, the Volibear cuts in and he's able to get out on top. Now, the next step of this clear is what makes it interesting. For example, now that the Kha'Zix has died, he's gonna go down to his blue side. Likewise, the Nidalee is gonna go to her blue side. Because both junglers use that red side quadrant gank to get their action going, it means that when you know the timers of the respawn of camps, you know, the first camp you do after the red buff will spawn around that 4:17 marker up until about 4:22, depending on if that's a Raptors or Krugs or Gromp. And the camp you do after that will spawn between 4:35 and 4:45, which means the Kha'Zix here knows he's gonna go downstairs, do his blue side quadrant, Nidalee's gonna go top side, he can focus his scuttle, he can look for bottom lane gank, he can look for mid lane gank, and then when the timer ticks over that 4:17 marker, he knows he can steal the Krugs or the Raptors, whichever one you did after the red buff. That's why tracking what the enemy jungler is doing is so important. Now the Nidalee here could do the same thing, yes, but instead, as you would have seen, what did she do? She decided to leave base, do her blue, do the scuttle. If you see a gankable lane in the mid lane, you can go for that gank and then cut off the Kha'Zix from his counter jungling because you know he's going to be doing it. Also, what you could be doing instead is simply you take his second Krugs or second Raptors, he takes your second Raptors or second Krugs, and you handshake that counter jungling. This means when you both do a right side quadrant clear, it's about who shows up first, who can react, what you do afterwards, and that decision matrix is very, very important. So we're gonna have a whole bunch of examples looking at how this clear plays out and how you can assess it to perfection to ensure that every game you have the best success using it. So here the Nidalee decided instead of handshaking the counter jungling or doing a blue side, I know the Kha'Zix is gonna do blue side, shove bot lane, which he does, do the scuttle and take my Krugs, he will expect me to do the same. And when expectations are set on meta clears, that's when, as you're seeing, you can choose to cut them off and prevent it. All to do with your matchups and your gold leads and your lane priors, so that's what we're going to discuss now. Remember, the whole idea is to set up tempo advantages over the enemy jungler, so you're not necessarily avoiding them completely, like they're not top side, you're not bot side. You are trying to get ahead of their goals while accomplishing your own, and when you have the same playstyle and the same clear routes, that kind of depends on matchups. So in this case, the Maokai decides to go Raptors, Red, Krugs, Leashless. Ideally, we would go bottom lane, but if that's not gankable, if there's no prio there, then you flex now either into an invade of the enemy jungler who's full clearing down, say your Kayns, which can be abused, or you just go to the mid lane. If the enemy jungler again does the same clear and they show up first like this Rumble does, then the prio of the bottom lane adds to your benefit. They can roam the supports and you can make plays. Here we die and the Rumble has to go back to base. But the second phase is different to the Nidalee. In this particular case, we're Maokai, we still need to get our own econ, we don't have the map mobility of an Italy, we can't go ahead and take blue, scuttle, collapse, and kill the Rumble. So what we do is we actually focus on taking our blue side, the scuttle, counter-jungling the Raptors, but when the enemy jungler and mid has prio and they notice these things, they can cut you off. And of course, the good play here is to get executed. After this, we can go back to base, and if we can get to the bottom side and gank that lane before the Rumble's able to finish his top side, reset, and come on down as well, you get that advantage also. And in most cases, and in most MMRs, the enemy jungle, the Rumble in this case, will not even be thinking about this. You'll be thinking about farm, you get ahead of him, you shove it up, and now you could either do a dragon, you could go back down to your red side and reset and look for hero plays. The map is yours. So we have the ability to gank bot, gank mid, invade, we have second rotations down to a T, we can handshake, we can cut them off, but what else does this clear provide when it becomes meta? Well, when it becomes meta, you see certain junglers try to mind game each other with different clears. For example, you might have a Shaco that decides, hey, you expect me to do red side, I'm gonna do blue side. It could allow you then to adapt and do a different clear. This Graves basically goes blue, red, Krugs, an old school level 3 clear just to avoid the cheese from the Shaco. I've done a whole video on that, I'll leave a link in the description below. And then instead goes for the bot lane gank while the Shaco does his blue side and is caught out a little bit. Both junglers mind gaming themselves and then they don't actually do those clears at all. What about this Lee Sin who does the clear, and thanks to vision we've gained, we see a Graves go from red to the Raptors and path towards his wolves, not towards his Krugs. This means we can go ahead and of course gank bottom lane and invade. If bottom lane isn't gankable, then we can go ahead and apply that pressure. And that here's the important thing, playing against junglers who don't do this clear and simply using yours as a way to punish them. The Graves does a dumb clear, which is not truly that dumb, but it's obviously why we don't like to do it. 4 camps to get level 3 is always worse than 3 camps to get level 3. If you do red, Raptors, Wolves, Grump, the sequencing is correct for sure, but you're severely compromised for your level 3 spike should you get invaded, should you need to rotate. It's better to do red, Krugs, Raptors, be level 3, skip the Wolves, and now you're in a better position to flex things, and that's why this clear is also better, even if you're someone in Graves' position who is trying to avoid this kind of invade as well. It gives the Graves the ability to react as necessary to what the Lee Sin is doing, versus now being severely compromised at level 2, and everyone just basically taking an early fisting and coin flipping the result. But the effect is still the same for the Lee Sin, who now has no red side camps, can go back to base, he's got his blue side, Graves should show up on the bottom side to take his blue, he reveals himself, we can steal his Raptors, and then full sequence all the way down to control our chems. The red side quadrant coming out on top, Graves ignoring it and getting punished by it. But what this also opens up is a possibility of when you know someone is doing it, like let's revisit the same matchup, Lee Sin vs Graves. The Graves is gonna do the red side clear on the top side, he can go gank top lane, he can gank mid lane, he can sequence down for the full clear rotation if nothing's available, and the Lee Sin knows this. So instead of doing, hey, the red side quadrant and ganking bottom side, if he knows through matchups and obviously just using his eyeballs that this lane should have prio for shove and a dive, why don't I do my red, go and steal his blue Grump, get level 3, then we can go ahead and make this proactive dive while counter jungling the Graves. And again, you have to make those plays proactively because you know the Graves is going to be coming on down. And this is the thing, again, the red side quadrant clear comes out ahead, the Graves can rotate, the Neeko has prio mid lane, and all of a sudden, yeah, the Lee Sin gets those kills, but they get collapsed upon. So the high risk plays that go against the red side clear always get punished, and the ability to react to anything with the red side clear is the best way to assess the jungle. However, you're thinking, wait, the game shouldn't be over here. Well, the Lee Sin has 0 camps that are going to respawn at a higher level. The Graves has taken all of his and the Grump will be given to him. So now the Graves has prio over bottom side, can counter jungle a level 1 Raptor camp, that's okay. Sure, the Lee Sin can go ahead and steal some Raptors if they're respawned and things like that, but the Graves gets another kill. The Graves is able to counter jungle a camp and the Lee Sin will now be trailing the Graves, who has control over second spawn Krugs, Raptors, and will be on the bottom side as well with an itemization advantage and an overall farming advantage. Once again, if you want to counter this clear, that's great, but the downsides are really heavy, and the upsides are basically the same as just doing the red side clear in the first place. And essentially, you can see once more, and this is happening a lot in Korea at the moment, it's doing a variation of the red side clear. Again, I say variation because as always, you can go leashless, you can start red, you can go Krug second, Raptor second, depends on where you want to gank. But this Viego, for example, does that, cuts through in front of the turret, knowing that the Xin Zhao's gonna want to do that because that's the meta, wards, sees, wins the 2v2. Now can fall back to blue side. Does blue Grump scuttle just to ensure that's in control, knowing the Xin Zhao is gonna do what we've been talking about this whole video. Go to the top side, maybe take some camps, get the scuttle, and try and repeat gank in the mid lane. So we set ourselves up for the predictable counter gank, win that as well, deep ward his jungle, go back to base, take our second spawn Krugs, take our second spawn Raptors, the Xin Zhao is forced now in a bit of a suboptimal position, and what we can do then is collapse for another fight, in the river. And even though we die, those kind of assessments and using your golden experience advantage is always going to be the best play. But even though the Viego is letting the enemy jungler get to where they want to be first, he knows it's happening through tracking and understanding of what this clear provides and positioning himself in a way to punish it. And now, instead of going to the top side where he has no camps up at the moment, knowing the Xin Zhao most likely will go and do those camps upon the respawn after the fisting in the river, he decides to swap sides and say, you know what, you go top side, I'm gonna go bottom side, because that way no one will expect it and I can get a nice gank on the bottom laners. They deserve a bit of help for their rotations. But the idea behind that is to either set yourself up for some strategic counter jungling of the Xin Zhao, knowing you can't maybe contest a Herald when it spawns at 8 minutes, or it's to, do a little bit of counter jungling, take some of your camps, rotate over to where the enemy jungler is actually going to be after their gank on the top side, and positioning yourself to control that Herald. So if you gank the bottom lane around that 6 minutes 30 to 7 minute marker, usually you can reset and control the map in such a way that you force the enemy jungler into tough decisions and you're positioned to take the Herald. Because now the Xin Zhao is going to leave the base, go to the blue, and maybe he wants to coin flip and fight over this, but ideally he should go to the bottom side and just say, look, I can't take the Herald, end of story. Got all my camps up, I can do a dragon, maybe I can gank the bottom lane. Those are his options. That's what he should do. And even though he's able to, kind of burn the Viego's ultimate getting out, that doesn't really matter on Viego, and he doesn't get the Herald, it's a waste of time. He could have easily taken the Viego's camps, taken the Scuttle, taken the Dragon, ganked the bottom lane, while the Viego invested on that Herald. And that therein is also the lesson here. While this is definitely the absolute best clear you can use in Season 13 because of all the strategic options you have available to you, it's about you understanding the matchups, which junglers are going to use this clear, which are not, how can I exploit this clear as well, and which is the best lane that I want to gank in the early game, and which is the best lane that they want to gank in the early game, and how do I reconcile these two things together. But then it's also what you do afterwards. Do we, do our own camps and invade and counter jungle? Do we do minimal camps and cut them off from counter jungling us? And largely this clear will take care of the first phase of the early game from 1 to 7 minutes. Understanding what to do from 7 to 12 to 40 minutes is a whole different idea that most junglers don't look at. They always end up in the wrong position relevant to heralds and dragons, much like the Xin Zhao. The best thing a jungler can do is hack the map. Have you wondered how challenger junglers always seem to have the help they need to make the right plays? Roaming supports, roaming top laners, a mid laner with an active brain. And in your games, you just never have a roaming support, no one ever helps you on objectives, and it feels like you're always playing by yourself. Well, in this video guide, I'm going to show you exactly how to control the map and make it to what you need in order to carry from the jungle. It can honestly feel like you take the support and you make them a mid laner, you make the mid laner a top laner, you take the ADC and throw them out in the trash, and your top laner becomes a roaming goon squad all by himself. This is from one of my personal games where I actually made a support, basically my little puppet, and I put this on my private jungle Discord, which is accessible through the membership links in the description below. And as always, please consider having a look at my jungle courses on my website, as well as joining us in the private jungle Discord to have access not only to the free jungle improvement PDF, but also weekly coaching classes, lectures, Q&As, and so much more, in addition to all of the jungle video courses included with it. The absolute jungle paradise for all junglers is Virkayu.gg. A lot of this is, hey, there's a roaming support that I need to play around, or two, how do I make my support roam with me? And as you're seeing that sweet Zyra drag, and you're asking at the moment, is this you, Virkayu? Yes, this is me. I'm showing you one of my games from the weekend placements. Went 4-1 with my Zyra jungle because they buffed it. Yes, I could 259, but why would I perhaps not 259? Why would I perhaps start red and instead of using 2 Ws and sequencing up and full clearing fast? Well, it's because while Ryze will push in the Nasus and beat the Nasus, I want to create a situation where I can have this Karma rotate with me. Because when the Karma rotates around with me, I'm able to actually deal with the Lee Sin, a meta jungler, anyone that might be invading me. So step 1 of support run prio is understand that you sometimes have to create that reality. If you do not create that reality, you're not going to have that assistance. Now, what I'm doing here is to mislead the Lee Sin. I'm getting leashed down here, I'm going all the way up. He's going to think I'm going to be here, and because Akshan will have prio over the Yasuo, I'm essentially just kind of hedging that. Because this guy is prio, this guy could just straight up invade me should he want, which is probably what most junglers should do when you see a Zyra jungle. And again, I have over 1.5 million points on this champion, been playing it for over 10 years. Most Zyra jungles you face are going to be terrible. And you can see here potentially, there's a possibility for roaming for a gank and things like this. But, it's difficult to lock this guy down. It is an Akshan, you have the Yasuo. He needs to make sure he hits a Q. It's not something I'm interested in. Yes, I could gank this lane. Yes, I could gank this lane. And you could even just drive by this as you see this ward is placed. But the Lee Sin always will have the ability to cut in and deal with you. you know, to some degree. And again, I want to create a roaming support situation with my Karma such that I don't get roamed up by a Lee Sin and an Alistar, because that is the biggest problem. Prior for Akshan, prior for Ryze, if he has prior, or if he roams around, I'm in a bit of a, like, I have to sag off and it sucks kind of situation. So what happens is, I go down and I'm going to do my Raptors here. The Lee Sin's doing this, okay? I did a little drive by mid lane. I kind of got baited in by the pings, even I do. Everyone gets baited in by pings. You know, it happened in a game after this as well. We were just smurfing the game. I was just having such a good time. Everyone on my team was playing well, except Aatrox, you know? He said he got counterpicked, died 4 times, and, you know, he started spam pinging as the Fear was finishing the turret. I thought, hey, maybe we could do something. Rotated and died. And, you know, it's very important to try and hold yourself to the standards of, this is what I want to do, this is why I'm doing it in the first place, and don't get drawn out by laners, which of course does happen, but, you know, nothing is uncorrectable in that particular situation. So what we do is we finish up our reverse clear here. The Akshan kills the Yasuo as expected, and now we move on around the wall. We don't really care if it's watered or not. We were tracking this anyway, and we just wait and we wait. We activate 2 Ws and Qs to get the kill. We hold our E until after the Alistar is more fully committed in position, so we can get the guaranteed CC, because we didn't need the guaranteed CC on the Varus. Now look at this. This is what's interesting. Lee Sin full close up, right? Ryze has already killed the Nasus, who's going to come back to lane here. And again, could have ganked these things, but Lee Sin started bot side. He's going upside. He could run into me. I'm doomed. So this is where the support and jungle roaming begins. Hopefully you've stuck with me so far, but it's very, very important to understand what sets up support roaming and jungle roaming as well. The Lee Sin here finishes his scuttle, and look at what he does. Goes into my jungle. Why? Because he saw Zyra on the bottom side after he saw me do some gankings. So then he thinks, Zyra probably started top side here and had a fake leash. And then again, why would he check it? Because the camps aren't going to respawn until 420 anyway, even if I did start in the blue. And secondly, if he sees me bottom side 24 CS level 4, he knows I've full cleared. So this is a complete random excursion, and yes, this still happens in Grandmaster games even. I've seen Challenger junglers get fooled by this. And so what happens is, I just go up here, I don't have a ward because I already used it, just because of the Akshan. I kind of wanted to track this movement here, and this movement, anyway, movement, because I know, and here's the starting of the timers, that Lee Sin did a full clear. He hasn't really shown for us, so he's going to show down here now. Like, he hasn't done anything on the map other than full clearing and scuttle, no kills, no successful anythings. So we know he's going to be coming down to a second spawn Gromp, so I placed a seed there. Great, right? We also know that because we ganked this lane, didn't help shove it, so we could focus this positioning, that this shove here was slower, but also gives our bottom lane more experience and more gold. Now they're going to go back to base, but the Alistar and the Virus, almost forgot his name for a second, are just arriving back into lane, yes? And because they're arriving back into lane right now, we know that the Alistar will look to roam to sync it with the Lee Sin, who's on the same side of the map, while the Karma and the Ezreal have to reset. This means the Virus gets solo experience, he gets a solo hold, and because he's got a Curtius shard, or whatever that is, he should be able to see us reasonably fine by himself. And honestly, it's on him. He gets solo experience, that's good as well. And hopefully he gets all of his CS. So let's watch it from the Alistar's perspective. He's going to move through here. I have this over here for the Lee Sin. This is placed by Yasubi. I placed this myself. He's put this control wood here. Look at what we've done to this side of the map. You know why? Because he and I understand that's what the Moo Cow is going to want to do. And because my bot lane has reset, he's going to give that solo catch-up to this Varus, and Lee Sin's on the same side. Now, Lee Sin's lagging behind this play a little bit, but there's no reason why he can't make it. Now, the downside for the Lee Sin in here is he's not going to have a scanner. He's not going to know that we've placed all of this vision, right? And so we would see him. That's because we played it well. But from his perspective, from your lower elo perspectives, imagine you see this cow right here, you see this crashing wave. You know Zyra, at this point, you should know Zyra, has reverse cleared down. That's the only way I ended up on the bottom side there, okay? Therefore, we could maybe go for some invades and deep vision here. We could go and tower dive this together if, depending on comms, or we could maybe set a trap and do something about the bottom lane. The Lee Sin decides to do his Gromp, shows up here, so we see this. I'm going to go ahead and do this over here. And now, the Alistar decides to roam to the mid lane. The Lee Sin decides to do what? Do you think the Lee Sin, alright, do you think the Lee Sin and the Varus can 2v2 this Karma and Ezreal in this moment? Or should the Lee Sin be thinking about, where's Zyra gonna go? Look at the cow. Cow's well positioned, right? Like if I finished this and moved on down here, guess what? They could kill me. They straight up could kill me. I wouldn't have full on knowledge of this, right? And the Lee Sin decides to walk down here, even though this is pinged. You're seen, guy. You're seen. And now he goes into this, okay? Boom. kill. I'm cutting in because I see it happen. I'm like, okay, maybe I can do something. My plants will, of course, finish that off. Benefits of the champion, I know. I enjoy. Yeah, for me, this is like, okay, that's it. Right? That's it. Now, the Lee Sin sneaks into this bush. Is this sneaking into, like, what are we witnessing here? Right? We as a blue team understood what the bottom lane was going to be doing based upon the tempo of the lane and the roaming possibilities. I tried to do something about the Akshan and it was pretty sad. But now that Lee Sin ropes to the mid lane, we saw all of this, right? Like, he's all in vision, which is why we try more risky plays. But now I'm like, is he, you know, like, is he gonna get me? I'm kind of just like healing up here a little bit as much as I can. Dragon the camp's getting a bit nervous because the Lee Sin could be looking to do something, all right? And this is the thing. As you look at it, imagine if Lee Sin had made the right moves around the Alistar. I should be punished for this greed. But I also know he's not going to show up because of everything he did, right? Like, I see this. So if I don't see the Lee Sin at this particular stage, and I see him gank mid lane with a cow, like, you're just running away here. You're giving this up. It sucks, but you can run away. You can also scan and maybe go counter jungling if you're feeling particularly adventurous. But the problem is the Lee Sin wasn't in position to capitalize. I'm going to carry on and heal up from this, right? And because now, this is the most important thing, right? We're doing this afterwards. Because the cow moved when we expect, made the gank that we expect, and of course it did work out, the Lee Sin didn't play around it appropriately because he wasn't paying attention to that. And then the cow goes back to base and resets. And if we look at the bottom lane here, while I'm floating with Raptors and worrying about the Lee Sin, I had to overkite it to heal up, otherwise I would never finish the Raptors. I knew it was going to slow down my whole thing, but I knew I would be full HP after Krugs. So basically I'm just waiting and watching. Like, I'm watching this. I'm not going to rotate. That's not my interest. I'm just defending camps from counter jungling. I'm watching this because the Alistar now has to go back to base, come down to the lane, so it's a 2v1. The Karma and the Ezreal can shove him in a 2v1, which creates what? Prio, which means they can move into the river, and I can finish my Krugs, and we can maybe do something about that because the cow's going to be late to lane, and the Lee Sin now, because we're tracking his CS, we know he only did his Grom. He literally full clear, did this, came back down here, did Grom, shouted in here, walked through here, and now he's doing nothing. So he's got Wolves, Raptors, Krugs available, right? So if we speed this up, there's a cow, but the wave is pushed in nicely, cannon wave as well, okay? We're pinging this off just in case Lee Sin decides to float all the way down, all right? Which is, of course, a possibility. That's why you saw that ping from me. I'm saying, look, the guy's here. I need to heal up from the Krugs. He might push on down to your shoved wave. Good deep vision here as well from the red team. So good vision from both teams. Blue team, red, whoopsie. Sorry, red team, there you go. And blue team, okay? So we're pretty well protected. So if you're wondering what the play is here, is that there's an RNG scuttle. We know the Lee Sin could move down here, but he has his wolves available. So he might look to do the wolves before coming to the scuttle. I'm tracking that, all right? I also place Discontrol with if you're wondering, because the cow shows up through vision and towards this bush, but as we saw from the ganking angle, he was in this pit a while. So I wasn't sure if this was warded when I was kind of like floating with death and letting the camp reset and just getting healthy. But now you look at me, right? Almost full HP from doing that. I'm going to be here in time for the Scuttle Crab, and because of the bounce of bottom lane and the early gank that I set up, my Karma has rotation, and I say, hey, let's go for this. I can smite this away from him. Boom, baby. I also hit the root on him. We get level 6 from it. We get the Electrocute prop. We're going to ult it. We think, plant plus an ult should do it, but he actually ward hops to his control ward, so I'm forced to flash auto, and I actually get the kill somehow, which is quite funny. But we'll take that, right? And now I can steal his blue, and all of that because Karma's body was in the river. That's it. The Karma saw me and played off of it, and I saw the Karma and played off of it. But I created that through the early gank, and the Karma did a good job understanding of when 2v1 push and when to move into river to match the jungle. Now, you're not always going to get supports that really understand that, but I think more often than not, if you give them the opportunity to do so, you will be able to. And as I said, because we knew that Lee Sin didn't have his wolves up, he did have his wolves up, and he did the wolves here, but when we killed him, we knew he had no camps in this site other than the Raptors and the Krugs. So what I can do is, again, use this prior to clear the vision, threaten, and then go for a dragon, right? All while he has to go topside. Ryze is obviously easily winning his lane. We're going to go ahead and snack this baby up. And then while that dragon finished, you see the Ezreal here, he's in a 2v1. So the Alistar either has to roam to match, or has to all in the Ezreal, but it's an Ezreal, right? And he's got a huge lead. And now what? The Alistar's roaming has been taken out of the game because of the Karma and myself. The Lee Sin has been taken out of the game as well. And we could maybe go for some, we gotta reset. We could maybe go for some Gromp invade and steals as we see this cleanup. We saw him, we pinged it, he didn't care. And we see the Akshan here who will just escape because he's Akshan. And then after that, obviously, we know the Lee Sin was topside, and there was a huge fiesta that I don't really want to talk about. I died, they died, we all got some kills. And then we know the Lee Sin's going to go to the bottom side here because he's got no top side camps. They did respawn while he was dead, but obviously, you know, that's just... We know he's going to go bot side first, human tendencies. He probably should have cut back up. But again, I had the Yasuo in a good position now. I had obviously the Rise being super low after killing the Nasus again, so I got the pressure point here. And that all leads to a free Herald, a free Snowball, and we honestly dominated the game from it. So hopefully that's a good look for you into not only how to set up your own support roams, but also how to react to it, to play around it. And of course, I understand why the Lee Sin went down here, but at the same time, you know, he doesn't have to go to the Grump, right? All he really has to do is look at this and go, okay, look, I clicked the Zyra, I see on the top left the blue and the red buff timers, and I see that the red buff's about to expire, the blue buff is significantly more fresh. That means she did this into this, and reverse clear down. So if he, instead of going for the Grump early, decides to maybe match the Alistar roam here, that actually would have caught me out, and been able to do quite a lot to them, because if he did that, right, let's just go back to the scenario, right? He goes down to the Grump, but he should know at this stage, Zyra's going to be reverse clearing, which means this camp will be up, this camp will be up. My cow's in a position to roam as he did here, right? Why don't I just come from the top side? And if my cow isn't there, then I can just invade or apply pressure or maybe gank it and then invade the Raptors. But basically, if the Lee Sin was here right now doing this, okay, I would have seen this and go, uh-oh. And then after this, the Lee Sin should know that with the cow, they can go and invade my Raptors. They didn't use their roaming tempo properly. Support did a great job ganking mid, but the Lee Sin didn't do his job as a jungler because you could direct your Alistar here to go and do something about these Raptor camps. Instead, he's down here. So hopefully you can see the pros and cons, how to read it, and how to look at the lanes of bottom lane to see where and when your support's going to roam. Just a little window. Obviously not every scenario. There's a lot of other things you can think about, but this is a good, simple way to show you the examples of it and how to leverage that into great advantages, even as a weird off-meta jungler. And hey, with all of that in mind and you wanting to apply these principles to, say, top lane as well as mid lane, because again, it's the same principles, just applied to different lanes, and then you want to 1v9 every game you play, click the video in the box on your screen now to really take your jungling to the next level.